"We'll fire anyone who can't meet their quotas," the young section chief said, eager to scold me. I couldn't meet my sales quota this month, so I bowed my head and said, "I understand. I'll resign." I was pushed to my limit mentally and physically, so I decided to leave the company. "Oh, you're really quitting? It'll be tough for an old man like you to lose your job," the section chief mocked me. The day after I left, I got a call from a former team member on my phone. "What's going on?" I asked. "It's bad, please come back, Mr. Watson," they said. Ever since I left, our clients had been calling nonstop, upset about my departure. Eventually, even the section chief had to bow and apologize to me. "My name is Benjamin Watson. I lost my father to illness when I was a child. I'm sorry for always making you feel lonely," I told my mom. "It's okay," she said. She raised me all by herself with no relatives nearby, working hard from morning until night. I wanted to help her, so I decided to start working as soon as I finished high school. "I'm sorry I've caused you so much trouble," I told my mom. "It's okay, just leave it to me," she replied, but finding a job was difficult. I was rejected from several places and was unemployed for a month. Finally, one insurance company gave me a chance for a sales job. I was nervous, because I knew the job would be tough with strict quotas, but I wanted to help my mom, so I went to the interview, determined to get the job. Whether they liked my enthusiasm or just needed staff, they hired me on the spot. 35 years later, I'm still working as a salesperson handling corporate clients. My monthly sales barely meet the quota, and I'm not on track for promotion, but my dedication has earned me the trust of my clients. "Can I ask you about insurance?" a client would say. "Of course. Can I visit you this afternoon?" I'd reply. Even on my days off, if someone called, I'd go to them to help ease their concerns. "Mr. Watson, are you taking enough time off?" someone asked me. "Huh? Well, yeah," I replied. "You say that, but you probably aren't," they said. It's unfair that clients get time off, but salespeople don't. But I wanted to help others, so I didn't mind. I often received thanks from my clients, and it kept me going. "Thank you for coming right away when I call." "No problem, call me anytime," I'd say. However, my boss didn't like the way I worked. "You're proud of selling such cheap insurance, aren't you?" he said. "Proud? I didn't mean to be, but every policy is important when it helps the client," I replied. I confidently responded to Section Chief Howard, even though he clearly didn't like me. Howard had recently been transferred from headquarters to our sales department. Unlike me, who only finished high school, Howard was an elite graduate from a well-known university. It was obvious that the head office had high hopes for him, as he had already become a section chief, even though he was nearly 20 years younger than me. "Do you think you're better just because you've worked for over 30 years and still haven't been promoted?" Howard sneered at me. From his point of view, I seemed incompetent, and looking at my low sales numbers, I couldn't really argue. "As part of my team, you're causing me problems if you don't bring in strong results," he added. It was clear Howard wanted to use this position to climb higher in the company, and he was very ambitious. While there was nothing wrong with his enthusiasm, I just couldn't agree with his approach. "Listen up, everyone. Selling cheap products to small businesses won't get us anywhere. Go after the big clients and sell them our best, top-tier products," Howard said, rallying the younger salespeople and sending them out. His strategy was to sell the most expensive insurance to large clients, pushing policies with the highest premiums, but I didn't agree with this method. The insurance Howard promoted covered many things and could prepare clients for all sorts of risks. However, the more coverage they had, the higher the cost, and I didn't think this was fair. Insurance should protect people without becoming a heavy financial burden, and often, it included things the client didn't really need. Howard would say, "Think of the worst-case scenario, stir up their anxiety, and make them feel like they need the insurance. That's what sales skill is all about." To me, this approach was ridiculous and didn't feel right. I believe in offering insurance that fits each company's needs, no matter their size. I take the time to listen to them carefully, which often means working late every day, but I feel it's necessary to ensure they understand everything. However, Section Chief Howard didn't agree with this approach. "Your way of working is inefficient. Sell faster and make more money," he said. I apologized, but continued doing things my way, even though I knew I was going against my boss. Still, I wasn't entirely sure if my way was the right one. "Are you even listening to me?" Howard snapped. "Huh? What did you say?" I was so worn out from work that I had been neglecting my family too. coming home late every night. I barely spent any time with them. When I was home, I was always too tired to really pay attention to my wife. I just want to spend more time with you, she said. I'm sorry, I'm just exhausted from work. You should rest on your days off. I'm worried about your health, she replied, clearly unhappy with the little time we had together as a family. Even though I was working for their sake, my family was becoming frustrated with me. It made me wonder if what I was doing was really okay. Then, my approach started to fall apart. Oh, look at that. You couldn't meet your quota, Howard mocked. I'm very sorry, I said, desperately apologizing for not hitting my sales numbers that month. He used the chance to scold me further. Mr. Watson, do you think you can make up for it next month? Section Chief Howard asked. I hesitated. If I didn't meet the quota this month, the shortfall would roll over to next month. Since I was barely meeting the current quota, the chances of catching up seemed slim. If you can't, maybe you should consider going part-time, Howard suggested with a smirk. Part-time? Is that even possible for a salesperson? I thought, confused. If you don't want that, then you're fired, Howard added. Fired? The word surprisingly didn't hit as hard as I expected. While I couldn't say I had no regrets about the job, I had been sacrificing so much, including my family time. Maybe it was time to accept being fired and focus on the family moments I'd missed. I pictured my wife's face and made my decision. Understood, I'll resign. Oh my, really quitting? It's going to be tough for an old man like you to lose your job, Howard taunted, but I just bowed my head and returned to my desk. After working here since high school, I knew I'd have to hand over my tasks. I started the resignation process that day. For the first time in ages, I came home on time. When I opened the door, my wife greeted me with a surprised look. At first, she seemed puzzled, but then she smiled. You're home early today, dinner's not ready yet. Can you wait? She said. Thank you, I replied. For the first time since we got married, I really watched her cooking, realizing how much time work had taken away from me. I've decided to quit my job, I told her. I see, she replied without asking for details. The next day, I submitted my resignation to Section Chief Howard, who seemed pleased. Please finish the handover quickly, he said with a broad smile. I cleaned up my desk and explained my duties to the person taking over. Until I officially left, I visited clients with my replacement. Mr. Watson, you're quitting? Many clients asked, trying to persuade me to stay. I politely said my goodbyes, and a month later, I left the company. It was sad to leave a place I had worked for so long, but my heart felt lighter. Surprisingly, my wife seemed to be in a good mood, even though I was now unemployed. You're not worried that I don't have a job anymore? I asked. Not at all. I was more worried that you were working too hard and might collapse one day, she replied. My wife had always been concerned about me because of how much I worked. You've worked so hard for so long. It's okay to take a break now, she added. Thanks for always worrying about me. How about we take a trip? We've got plenty of time now, I suggested. That sounds wonderful. Let's go to a hot spring and relax from all those years of stress, she said, excited. The next day, we set off for a hot spring trip. While I was enjoying the time with my wife, I got a call from a former team member. What's going on? I asked. It's terrible, Mr. Watson, please come back, he said, sounding panicked. He explained that ever since I quit, the company had been getting non-stop calls from clients who wanted to cancel their contracts. The situation had gotten so bad that it was disrupting their work. Not only are the calls overwhelming, but if we lose all these contracts, the company is going to be in big trouble. Can you please come back? He begged. I'm not coming back, I replied. What? He exclaimed. Just handle each client with care and sincerity. That's all you need to do, I said before hanging up and turning off my phone. My wife, who had been watching, looked confused. What happened? She asked. My former team member asked me to come back to work, I explained. So, they finally realized how valuable you were, huh? She said, smiling. Although I missed my work, I knew that if I went back, I wouldn't be able to enjoy these moments with my wife. Seeing her so happy made me realize it was worth staying away from work. After that, I blocked any more calls from my former colleagues and focused on enjoying our trip. While we were out for a walk, my wife invited me to an old-fashioned cafe. This place is lovely, I've always wanted to come here, she said. You really know your cafes, I remarked. At my comment, she looked a little sad, and I wondered if I had said something wrong. You know, visiting cafes is my hobby, she said quietly. Oh, I didn't know that, I admitted. Yeah, cafes are trendy and have cute food, lots of women enjoy them, she said with a smile. I'm actually a certified barista, did you know? Wow, that's amazing, I said, genuinely impressed. I remembered my wife mentioning before that visiting cafes was her hobby and that she had a barista certification. Her voice became a little sad, and I felt a pang of guilt. When I was working, I had been too tired to really listen to her stories. It's okay, she said, when we get home, I'll make you some of my special coffee. True to her word, after we returned from our trip, she made me a cup of coffee. It was completely different from the instant coffee I was used to. This is delicious, I can't believe I get to drink this at home, I said, amazed. I'll make it for you anytime, she smiled. From that day on, my mornings began with the coffee my wife brewed for me. As I spent more time with her and my family, I realized there was so much I didn't know. Regretting how much I had neglected them, I decided to make family time a priority from now on. I used to work for a company, but now I'm excited to start something new. No matter how old you get, starting fresh can be nerve-wracking, but I knew I'd be fine with my wife by my side. Together, we opened a small cafe. When I was unemployed, my wife shared a little dream with me. I want to work in a cafe I love, living a relaxed life in our old age. So, we took my resignation as a chance to chase her dream together. At first, the customers were mostly her friends, but word spread, and now our business is thriving. With my sales experience, I was good at serving customers, and my wife enjoyed chatting with friends while working. She always seemed so happy. Welcome, I said to a customer one day, only to be surprised when I saw it was Chief Howard. His eyes widened when he saw me. I smiled and led him to a seat. Is this your new job? He asked. Yes, I started it with my wife, I replied. It looked like Chief Howard was in the middle of his workday and had decided to stop by. He used to stay at the office, but it seemed like he had been visiting clients more since I left. You look really happy now, Mr. Watson, he remarked. Do I? Maybe, I said. It made me realize how tired I had always been at the company, especially since I hadn't been able to spend much time with my wife. Now, I could enjoy work and time with her. You seem to be having fun, I told him, noticing that he looked more energized than before. I'm trying to be more like you, Mr. Watson. You're my goal, he said. Then, checking his watch, he stood up. I'll bring the whole team next time. Thanks for the meal, he added before leaving, looking lighter on his feet. I believe Chief Howard will continue to grow from here. Later, my wife called out. I made coffee. Thanks, I said. After closing the cafe, we sat side by side at the counter, sipping the coffee she brewed. It had been another busy day, but it was enjoyable. Sitting there with my wife, talking about the day, felt calm and special. Thank you for everything, I said. Why so formal all of a sudden? She laughed. I smiled, realizing how much these moments meant to me. From now on, I would treasure every one of them.
Numbers have always fascinated me, especially the ones that don't add up. Like the $5,000 missing from our joint account, or the 3 nights a week Ryan claims he's working late, or the 2 wedding rings I'm staring at on our bedroom dresser. One his, one mine. Only mine is where it should be. I'm Fiona, and I used to write code that made numbers dance. Now I'm just trying to make sense of the ones that keep slapping me in the face. The bank statement trembles in my hands as I scroll through the transactions on my phone. Another withdrawal, this time for $3,500. No note, no explanation, just money vanishing like morning mist. The kind of money that could pay our mortgage for 2 months. Ryan, I call out, my voice steadier than I feel. Can you come here for a minute? His footsteps echo down the hallway, each one matching my quickening pulse. He appears in the doorway, laptop tucked under one arm, that familiar half-smile playing on his lips, the smile that used to make me feel safe. Now it just makes me feel stupid. What's up, honey? I'm in the middle of something important. So am I. I turn my phone screen toward him. Want to explain these withdrawals? The smile doesn't falter, but something shifts behind his eyes. Just some business expenses. You know how it is with the new project. No, Ryan, I don't know how it is, because you never tell me anything anymore. He sets his laptop down with deliberate care. Look, I know you're used to understanding everything, Miss Software Engineer, but some things in business are complicated. Former software engineer, I correct him. The old wound still raw. And basic math isn't complicated. 5,000 here, 3,500 there. That's our savings disappearing. Jesus, Fiona. He runs a hand through his hair, exasperation creeping into his voice. This is exactly why I don't tell you everything. You're just a housewife now. You wouldn't understand the pressures I'm under. The words hit like a physical blow. Just a housewife. 3 years ago, I was leading development teams. Now I'm just a housewife who apparently can't understand basic business concepts. Try me, I challenge him, standing up. Explain it to the housewife who used to debug systems you couldn't even comprehend. Don't start this again. He reaches for his laptop. I have a meeting with Mark in 20 minutes. We can discuss this later. With Mark at 8:30 in the evening? Yes, with Mark. His tone sharpens. Some of us still have careers to maintain. He turns to leave, but I'm not finished. Does Grace know about these late meetings? Ryan freezes, his back to me. For just a moment, I see his shoulders tense. Then he laughs, but it sounds hollow. Mark's wife. What does she have to do with anything? I don't know, Ryan. You tell me. He spins around, and now the smile is gone completely. You know what? I don't have time for your paranoid accusations. When you're ready to act like an adult, we can talk about the finances. The door slams behind him, leaving me alone with the numbers that don't add up and the questions that won't go away. I pick up his wedding ring from the dresser, feeling its weight in my palm. He claims he takes it off to wash his hands, but it's been happening more frequently lately. My phone buzzes. A text from Olivia. Coffee tomorrow. We need to talk. I text back a quick yes before opening my laptop. It's been a while since I've done any serious coding, but some skills never leave you, like tracking digital footprints, or following money trails, or piecing together patterns that others try to hide. Ryan thinks I'm just a housewife who wouldn't understand. He's about to learn how dangerous underestimating someone can be. The coffee shop bustles with morning regulars, but Olivia's face draws my attention like a beacon of worry. She's already ordered my usual black coffee, no sugar, and her fingers drum an anxious rhythm on the ceramic mug. You look like hell, she says, as I slide into the booth. Thanks. I feel worse. I wrap my hands around the warm cup, anchoring myself. Ryan's mother is coming over for dinner tonight. Apparently, she needs to discuss my concerning behavior with both of us. Olivia's eyebrows shoot up. Emily's involved now. That's rich, considering she can't balance her own checkbook without Ryan's help. She called this morning, said she's worried about my accusations and how they might affect Ryan's career. The coffee burns my throat, but I welcome the pain. Funny how she's more concerned about his career than our marriage. Have you shown her the bank statements? Ryan got to her first, told her I'm becoming paranoid, unstable. I let out a bitter laugh. Apparently, giving up my career has left me with too much time to imagine things. A text notification lights up my phone. Emily, bringing that lovely pot roast you used to love. We'll sort this all out tonight, dear. Olivia leans forward, her voice dropping. Listen, there's something else you should know. I saw Ryan yesterday at Meridian Plaza. My stomach clenches. The luxury apartments? He was with a woman, blonde, expensive clothes, around our age. Olivia hesitates. They looked comfortable together. The description matches Grace Turner perfectly. I've met her twice at company functions, watched her laugh at Ryan's jokes with practiced elegance. Did they see you? No, they were too absorbed in each other. Olivia reaches across the table, squeezing my hand. Fee, you need to protect yourself. Start gathering evidence, documenting everything. I already am. I pull out my laptop, typing rapidly. Remember that tracking app I developed at my old company? I modified it last night. Ryan's phone is already sending me location data. Olivia's eyes widen. Is that legal? It's our shared family plan. His phone is technically joint property. The screen fills with data points, each one a digital breadcrumb. Look at this pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday, 2-hour stops at Meridian Plaza. The same times he's supposedly meeting with Mark. Exactly. I closed the laptop, my mind racing. But Mark's usually at the downtown office on Thursdays. I checked his public calendar. The bell above the coffee shop door chimes, and Emily Carter walks in. Her perfectly coiffed hair and pressed outfit, a stark contrast to my hastily thrown-together appearance. She spots us immediately, her practiced smile never reaching her eyes. "Fiona, dear, what a lovely surprise." She glides over, ignoring Olivia completely. "I was just shopping for tonight's dinner. You are still planning to be there, aren't you?" "Wouldn't miss it," I reply, matching her tone. "Ryan's so busy lately. It's rare to have him home for dinner." Something flickers across Emily's face, doubt, concern, but it's gone in an instant. "Yes, well, success requires sacrifice. You understood that when you married him." She pats my shoulder condescendingly. 6:30 sharp, dear, we have so much to discuss." After she leaves, Olivia lets out a low whistle. That woman could freeze hell with a smile. She's always been Team Ryan. I start packing up my laptop. But maybe that's exactly what I need tonight. "What are you planning?" Emily prides herself on appearances, on her perfect family image. I stand, shouldering my bag. Let's see how she handles it when that image cracks. "Fee, be careful. Ryan's got her wrapped around his finger." "Maybe," I smile, thinking of the data quietly collecting on my laptop. But even perfect sons make mistakes, and I'm done being the unstable wife who imagines things. Walking home, I check my phone again. Ryan's location blinks steadily at his office, but a quick check of his credit card shows a lunch charge at a restaurant near Meridian Plaza. More numbers that don't add up, more lies piling up like kindling. Tonight, at dinner, I'll strike the first match. Emily wants to discuss my concerning behavior. Fine, let's discuss everything. Every withdrawal, every late meeting, every missing hour. Let's see how many cracks appear in the perfect family facade when the truth starts seeping through. Emily's pot roast sits untouched on my plate, while Ryan regales us with another story about his latest project's success. His mother beams, hanging on every word. But I'm watching his hands. The way his right index finger keeps tapping the stem of his wine glass. A tell he's had since I first met him. And Mark was so impressed with the presentation. He's considering me for the Singapore expansion. Ryan raises his glass. "To new beginnings." "Singapore?" The word drops like a stone in my stomach. "You never mentioned Singapore before." Emily jumps in. "Oh, wouldn't that be wonderful? Such an opportunity for advancement." My phone buzzes quietly in my lap. A notification from my tracking app. Grace Turner's Instagram just tagged a new location, Meridian Plaza. I take a slow sip of wine, letting the pieces click into place. "Speaking of Mark," I say carefully, "how's Grace doing? I heard she's been quite busy lately." Ryan's finger freezes mid-tap. "I wouldn't know. Mark handles most of her social engagements." "Really? Because I heard she's taken quite an interest in real estate. Particularly in Meridian Plaza." The silence that follows is absolute. Emily looks between us, confusion creasing her perfectly maintained facade. "Meridian Plaza, isn't that where that horrible divorce scandal happened last year? The CEO and his secretary." "Mother," Ryan warns, but I'm already pulling out my phone. "Funny you should mention scandals, Emily. Would you like to see some interesting financial records?" I slide my phone across the table. These withdrawals coincide perfectly with the rental payments for Unit 1504 at Meridian Plaza, the same unit Grace visits every Tuesday and Thursday. Emily's face drains of color as she scrolls through the transactions. "Ryan, darling, there must be some mistake." "There's no mistake." I stand up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Your perfect son has been using our savings to fund his affair with his boss's wife. Would you like to see the location data too? Or the credit card statements from all those business dinners?" Ryan slams his hand on the table, making the plates jump. "That's enough. Mother, Fiona's been unstable lately. She's imagining." "Imagining what?" I cut him off. The lipstick on your collar last week? The mysterious calls you take in the garage? Or maybe I imagined Grace's car leaving Meridian Plaza 10 minutes after you every Thursday. Emily's hands shake as she sets down my phone. Ryan, please tell me this isn't true. Of course it's not true, but his voice cracks. That familiar tell when he's lying. She's trying to destroy everything I've built because she's jealous of my success. I laugh, and the sound surprises even me. Sharp and cold as broken glass. Success? Is that what you call embezzling company funds to keep your mistress in a luxury apartment? You bitch. Ryan stands, looming over me. You think you're so clever with your little tracking apps and investigations. You're nothing but a washed-up programmer playing detective. Ryan, Emily gasps, but I hold up my hand. No, let him finish. Let him explain to you why he's been stealing from our accounts. Let him tell you about the Singapore position. The one Mark doesn't actually know about yet, because it's just an escape plan with Grace. My phone buzzes again. This time it's a text from Olivia. Mark's on his way. Grace confessed everything. Ryan must see something change in my expression, because he grabs his keys. This is ridiculous. I don't have to listen to these accusations. Running to Grace? I call after him. Better hurry. Mark should be there any minute. He freezes in the doorway, and for the first time, I see real fear in his eyes. Emily stands shakily, her perfect world crumbling around her. I trusted you, I say quietly. We both did. But you forgot something important, Ryan. You forgot that before I was your wife, before I was just a housewife, I was the person who designed the security systems you thought you could outsmart. The sound of a car pulling into our driveway makes Ryan flinch. Through the window, I see Mark Turner stepping out, his face set in stone. You wanted new beginnings. I pick up my wine glass, raising it in a mock toast. Well, here they come. The front doorbell rings, and 3 years of lies begin their final unraveling. Emily sinks back into her chair, her pot roast growing cold, while I stand ready to watch everything burn. Sometimes, revenge doesn't need to be served cold. Sometimes, it just needs perfect timing. The aftermath of dinner spreads through our house like a toxic cloud. Mark and Ryan's shouting match in the study has devolved into tense silence, while Emily sits in the living room, mechanically folding and refolding her napkin. I stand in the kitchen, washing dishes that don't need washing, listening to the tick of the clock on the wall. The front door opens and closes. Grace's heels click across the hardwood floor. I recognize her walk now, after all those surveillance videos. She pauses in the kitchen doorway, her designer outfit slightly disheveled, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. He said you were unstable, she says quietly. That you were imagining things because you couldn't handle losing your career. I place another clean plate in the drying rack. Funny how he uses the same lies for everyone. I didn't know about the money. Grace steps closer, her perfume mingling with the dish soap. He told me the apartment was from his bonus. There was no bonus. I turn off the water, finally facing her. Just like there's no Singapore expansion. He's been stealing from both of us. A crash from the study makes us both jump. Emily appears in the doorway, her perfect composure finally cracking. Mark's called the company's legal team. They're pressing charges. The words hang in the air like smoke. Pressing charges. The revenge I wanted now has teeth, and they're sinking deeper than I expected. Fiona. Ryan's voice makes me stiffen. He stands in the kitchen entrance, Mark's looming presence behind him. Tell them you made a mistake. Tell them you misunderstood the transactions. Like you misunderstood your wedding vows. The words come out sharper than I intended. Don't be dramatic. He steps forward, that familiar manipulative smile playing at his lips. We can fix this. Together. Remember when we first met, how you said you'd do anything for us. Ryan. Mark warns, but Ryan continues. I can explain everything. The money, Grace, all of it. But I need you to trust me one more time. For a moment, I almost want to believe him. 3 years of marriage, of shared dreams and promises, pull at me like gravity. Then I notice Grace's hand trembling as she grips her purse. See Emily's devastated expression, and something inside me hardens. Trust you. I reach for my laptop, opening files I've spent weeks compiling. Like you trusted me with this? The screen fills with transaction records, text messages, location data, a digital trail of betrayal laid bare. But it's the last file that makes Ryan's smile finally fade. Photographs from his private email, documenting more than just an affair. Corporate espionage? Mark's voice is deadly quiet. You've been selling our patents? Ryan lunges for the laptop, but I'm faster, stepping back. The money wasn't just for Grace, was it? You needed it to cover your tracks with your other buyers. You bitch. He swings at me, but Mark grabs him, pinning him against the counter. Grace lets out a small scream, and Emily sinks into a kitchen chair. I trusted you, I say, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Even when I found the first discrepancies, I wanted to believe there was an explanation. But you didn't just betray me, Ryan. You betrayed everyone in this room. The sound of sirens grows in the distance. Mark must have called them before confronting Ryan. Grace backs away toward the door, her face ashen. I'm sorry, she whispers, though I'm not sure to whom. Ryan struggles against Mark's grip. You have no idea what you've done. When this gets out, it already has. I show him my phone, where Olivia's text glows. Documents received. Legal team processing everything now. The sirens are louder now. Red and blue lights painting our kitchen walls like a garish nightmare. Emily reaches for my hand, surprising me. I should have seen it, she says softly. All those times he said you were imagining things. We all wanted to believe him. I squeeze her hand, watching as police cars pull into our driveway. That's what makes a good liar so dangerous. Ryan's face contorts with rage and fear as uniformed officers approach our door. In this moment, I should feel triumph, satisfaction, the sweet taste of revenge. Instead, I feel something unexpected. Freedom. The weight of secrets and lies lifts from my shoulders like a heavy coat, leaving me lighter, clearer. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes you have to set it free yourself. And damn the consequences. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Mark's face as he slides a manila envelope across the interview room table. There's more, he says, his voice tight. The patents weren't just being sold. They were being weaponized. I open the envelope with trembling fingers, spreading out documents that make my stomach turn. Lines of code I recognize. My code, from projects I'd worked on years ago, twisted and repurposed into something malicious. Ryan didn't just steal from the company, Mark continues. He sold your old security protocols to competitors. They're using them to build backdoors into financial systems. The room suddenly feels too small, too bright. My protocols were defensive. They were meant to protect. I know. Mark rubs his temples. That's why we need your help. You're the only one who understands how these systems work. A detective enters, carrying coffee I didn't ask for. Mrs. Carter, we'll need you to testify about the original code architecture. No. The word comes out before I can stop it. I can't be involved. The evidence you have is enough. It's not. Mark leans forward. Without your testimony, Ryan's lawyers will claim the code modifications were authorized. He's already spinning a story about you hacking company servers for revenge. My coffee cup trembles, dark liquid sloshing over the rim. Of course, Ryan would try to turn this around, make me the villain. Even now, he's playing chess while I'm playing catch-up. My phone buzzes. Olivia, Emily's at my house. She found something in Ryan's old files. Come quick. I need time to think, I tell Mark, standing up. The detective starts to protest, but Mark waves him off. 24 hours, Mark says. That's all we can give you. The drive to Olivia's house feels surreal. Streetlights blurring past like stars. Emily meets me at the door, clutching a leather portfolio I recognize from Ryan's study. I was cleaning, she says, hands shaking as she opens it. I thought if I kept things normal. Inside are more documents. bank statements, offshore accounts, and emails dating back 5 years. Before our marriage, before everything. He planned this, Emily whispers. He chose you because of your expertise, because you could give him access to. Stop. The word comes out sharp enough to make both Emily and Olivia flinch. I scan the emails, each one a knife, twisting deeper. Ryan discussing my capabilities with unknown contacts, evaluating my potential usefulness, planning how to convince me to leave my job. Fiona, Olivia starts, but I'm already moving, grabbing my keys. Where are you going? Emily calls after me. To finish this, the drive to the detention center, where they're holding Ryan, takes 20 minutes. I spend each one remembering every lie, every manipulation, every moment I doubted myself because he told me I was being paranoid. He's waiting in the visitation room, orange jumpsuit stark against his pale skin. The smile he gives me is the same one he used when telling me I was imagining things. I knew you'd come, he says. You always were predictable. Like how you predicted I'd quit my job to support your career. I lay Emily's portfolio on the table between us. Or how you predicted I'd be too broken to notice what you were doing with my old code. The smile falters, just slightly. Everything I did was for us. No. I lean forward, dropping my voice. Everything you did was because you underestimated me. You thought I was just a housewife who wouldn't understand. Be careful, Fiona. His voice hardens. You're not the only one with evidence. One phone call, and certain people will be very interested in your recent activities. You mean like the tracking software? The financial traces? I smile, and for the first time, I see real fear in his eyes. Go ahead, show them. Every line of code is documented, every access point logged. I learned from the best, after all. Standing, I gather the portfolio. I'm testifying tomorrow, not for Mark, not for the company, but for every person you've manipulated and betrayed. And when I'm done, you won't just lose your freedom, you'll lose your last shred of control. You'll regret this, he calls, as I reach the door. You have no idea what you're starting. I turn back, meeting his gaze one last time. No, Ryan, I'm not starting anything. I'm finishing what you began. The door closes behind me with a final click, and I step into the evening air, my path suddenly clear. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about reclaiming your own power, one truth at a time. The courtroom feels like a trap closing in. Each tick of the wall, clock another tooth in the mechanism. I sit at the witness stand, my carefully prepared testimony crumbling, as Ryan's lawyer circles like a shark that smells blood. Ms. Carter, isn't it true that you developed the original security protocols while employed at TechCore? Yes, and these protocols were company property, correct? His smile reminds me of Ryan's. Practiced, predatory. The base code was, the modifications were made by my client under authorized company directives. He slides a document across to the judge. Exhibit C, Mr. Carter's project authorization, signed by the board. Mark shifts in his seat, his face dark. We hadn't known about this document. Another of Ryan's chess moves, played perfectly. Ms. Carter, the lawyer continues, please explain to the court how you obtained the tracking data on my client's movements. My throat tightens. This is the trap, the one Ryan warned me about. I used a modified version of company proprietary software you no longer had legal access to? The judge leans forward. Ms. Carter, did you illegally access company systems to track your husband? The courtroom spins. Everything I'd built, all the evidence I'd gathered, Ryan's lawyer is turning it against me, piece by piece. I catch Emily's eye in the gallery. She looks away. Your Honor, Mark's lawyer interjects. The defendant's activities were instrumental in uncovering corporate espionage. Ryan's lawyer cuts in smoothly. My client was conducting an authorized internal investigation into security breaches. Ms. Carter's unauthorized surveillance actually compromised that investigation. My hands grip the witness stand. The lie is so perfect, so carefully constructed. Ryan isn't just destroying my credibility. He's rewriting history. Furthermore, his lawyer produces another document. We have evidence that Ms. Carter attempted to access offshore accounts using company resources. Those were Ryan's accounts. I protest, but my voice sounds weak even to me. Accounts used in the authorized investigation, which you attempted to compromise. The judge calls a recess, but the damage is done. In the hallway, Mark approaches with his lawyer, their faces grim. He planned this, Mark says, quietly. The board authorization, the investigation cover story. He's been setting this up for months. What about the patent sales, the stolen money? All documented under official company operations. Mark's lawyer shakes his head. He had paperwork for everything. We can't prove it was fraudulent without my testimony. I lean against the wall, feeling the cold marble against my spine, which he just destroyed. Olivia appears, clutching her phone. Fiona, it's worse. Someone leaked your tracking software to the press. They're calling it corporate surveillance, saying you were spying on multiple employees. Ryan, I whisper, of course. He's not just discrediting my testimony. He's making me the villain of the story. Grace passes by with her lawyer, not meeting anyone's eyes. She's cut a deal, I realize. Ryan's offered her immunity in exchange for supporting his version of events. My phone buzzes. An email from the district attorney. They're considering charges against me for corporate espionage and illegal surveillance, the very crimes I was trying to expose. We can fight this, Mark starts, but I shake my head. He wins. The words taste like ash. He took everything I had, my marriage, my career, my reputation, and turned it into a weapon against me. Emily approaches hesitantly, holding a newspaper. The headline makes my stomach lurch. Tech wife's revenge. Plot exposes corporate privacy concerns. I'm sorry, she whispers. I never thought he would. None of us did. I push away from the wall, walking toward the courthouse doors. Outside, reporters wait with cameras and microphones, ready to capture my fall from grace. Behind me, I hear Olivia calling my name, but I keep walking. 3 years of marriage, 15 years of career experience, a lifetime of trust and justice. All of it lies shattered on the courthouse floor. Ryan's words from the detention center echo in my head. You have no idea what you're starting. He was right. I thought I was fighting for truth, for justice, for revenge. Instead, I walked right into his perfect trap, becoming the villain in his carefully crafted story. The cameras flash as I push through the courthouse doors. Each burst of light, another nail in the coffin of my old life. Sometimes revenge doesn't just fail, it becomes the very thing that destroys you. The USB drive feels impossibly small in my hand as I stand outside Ryan's office. Through the glass walls, I can see him at his desk, basking in his courtroom victory. The security badge clipped to my blouse, courtesy of Mark's last act before his resignation, might be my final chance to set things right. Mrs. Carter, Ryan's assistant, blinks in surprise. I didn't think. It's fine, Sarah. Ryan's voice carries that familiar condescending warmth. Let her in. I think my wife and I are overdue for a chat. The door clicks shut behind me. Ryan leans back, adjusting his tie, the blue one I gave him for our second anniversary. Come to concede defeat properly? Instead of answering, I plug the USB drive into his computer. His smile falters as dozens of windows pop up on his screen. What is this? The truth. My voice stays steady as I perch on the edge of his desk. Not the sanitized version you fed the court, the real logs, showing every transaction, every meeting, every lie. He starts to reach for the computer, but I catch his wrist. Touch it, and these files automatically upload to every board member, the SEC, and 3 major tech blogs. You're bluffing. But uncertainty creeps into his voice. The court already ruled. The court ruled on what they could prove, but you taught me well, Ryan. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about winning. It's about having better leverage. His screen fills with more documents, the real board authorizations, showing his forgeries, Grace's original emails, detailing their plan, the actual financial trails he thought he'd hidden. How did you get access? You really should change your passwords more often. Emily Carter 58 isn't exactly cryptographic genius. The color drains from his face as he scrolls through the files. This will destroy everything. The company, the deals, your perfect facade. I stand, moving toward the door. That's the point. Wait. He rises, desperation replacing his usual confidence. We can make a deal, whatever you want, money, position, full confession. Like the deal you made with Grace? The words strike like physical blows. Or the one you made with those tech companies, selling out everything I built? I did it for us. He slams his hand on the desk. Everything I built, every move I made, was for yourself. Emily's voice cuts through the room. She stands in the doorway, holding her own USB drive. I found your original plans, Ryan. From before you even met Fiona. Ryan's face contorts. Mother, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Emily steps inside, closing the door. I understood when I found your notes about targeting Fiona for her expertise. I understood when I discovered your offshore accounts, the ones you've had since before the marriage. You helped me destroy her credibility. He snarls. You sided with me. I protected you, like I always have. Emily's voice cracks. But I can't protect you from this. His computer chimes. New windows opening. Board members responding to emergency messages. Security alerts flashing across the screen. What have you done? Ryan whispers. Nothing you haven't already done to yourself. I move toward the door. The board has everything now. The real documents. The genuine trails. Your perfect trap is about to snap shut on you instead. He lunges for his phone, but it's already too late. Through the glass walls, we can see security approaching, followed by stern-faced board members. You'll go down with me, he threatens. Everything you did was documented and authorized. I hold up another drive. Mark signed off on my internal investigation before he resigned. Everything I did was legal, unlike your corporate espionage. The door opens. Board members file in, their faces grim. Ryan straightens his tie one last time, trying to summon his old confidence, but it crumbles under the weight of truth. Sometimes, I say quietly, the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about letting them destroy themselves. As security escorts Ryan out, Emily touches my arm. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. We see what we want to see. I watch Ryan disappear down the hallway, his shoulders finally slumped in defeat. Until we can't anymore. The board chairman approaches with a thick envelope. Mrs. Carter, we'd like to discuss your future with the company. I take the envelope, feeling its weight, not just paper, but possibility. Sometimes revenge doesn't end in destruction. Sometimes it ends in resurrection. The corner office still smells of fresh paint and new beginnings. My laptop screen glows with lines of code. Not weapons or traps this time, but shields. Protection. The irony doesn't escape me that I'm rebuilding the very security systems Ryan tried to destroy. A knock at the door interrupts my coding flow. Olivia stands there, holding a newspaper. Thought you might want to see this. The headline reads, Tech Executive Pleads Guilty to Corporate Espionage. Below it, a smaller headline. Former employee, appointed head of security division. Strange, Olivia says, perching on my desk. They didn't mention you were his wife. Ex-wife. I close the newspaper. And that's exactly how I want it. My phone buzzes. A text from Emily. Signed the house over today. It's yours now. I type back a quick thank you, remembering our last conversation in the kitchen, where everything started. She'd said something that stuck with me. Sometimes the strongest walls aren't the ones we build around ourselves, but the ones we tear down. The elevator chimes, and Grace steps out, clutching a cardboard box. Her eyes meet mine through the glass walls. For a moment, we just look at each other, two women who trusted the same lie. She sets the box by the reception desk and leaves without a word. Inside, I know I'll find the evidence she kept as insurance against Ryan, now surrendered as her final act of penance. The board meeting starts in 10, Olivia reminds me. Ready to present the new security protocols? I stand, smoothing my blazer. Almost. Just need to finish this last sequence. My fingers fly over the keyboard, adding one final layer to the system. Not just protection against external threats, but internal ones too. A safeguard against the kind of manipulation and betrayal that Ryan specialized in. You know, Olivia says quietly, when you first found those withdrawals, I thought you were going to destroy him. I did too. I save the code and close my laptop. But revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about reconstruction. The conference room fills with board members, their faces expectant. As I set up my presentation, I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the window. No longer the housewife who wouldn't understand, but not quite the same engineer I was before either. Something new, forged in the fire of betrayal and tempered by choice. My phone buzzes one last time. An unknown number. You were right. About everything. R. I delete the message without responding. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Mrs. Carter, the board chairman gestures for me to begin. Show us what you've created. I stand before them, my presentation ready, but instead of launching into technical specifications, I start with a simple truth. Security isn't just about keeping threats out. It's about recognizing them before they become part of your foundation. The board members lean forward, interested. Through the glass walls, I can see Olivia giving me a thumbs up, while Emily waves from the reception area, dropping off lunch like she still does sometimes. Not out of obligation now, but choice. My new security system fills the screen behind me. Complex, elegant, and unlike anything Ryan could have twisted or sold. Because this time, it's built not just with code, but with understanding. Understanding of how trust can be weaponized, how love can blind, and how strength sometimes means letting go of the very revenge you thought you needed. The system has one unique feature, I explain, pulling up the final screen. It learns from every attempt to breach it, growing stronger not by building higher walls, but by understanding why people try to climb them in the first place. As I launch into the technical details, I realize that's exactly what I've done too. Grown stronger not by destroying Ryan, but by understanding how he almost destroyed me. The revenge I thought I wanted has transformed into something else entirely. Not an ending, but a beginning. The code on the screen pulses with possibility. Each line a promise of protection. Each function a lesson learned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about getting better. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's about building something so strong that the past becomes nothing more than a shadow against its walls. Money has a way of revealing people's true nature, especially when it belongs to someone else. I learned this the hard way when my husband Michael called me at work, his voice dripping with that fake sweetness I'd grown to despise. Elena, darling, we need to discuss tonight's dinner arrangements. I pressed my phone closer to my ear, already sensing the trap beneath his words. What arrangements? I've invited the entire family to LeBlanc. Mother and father are flying in specially for this. You'll need to cover the expenses. About $25,000 should do it. The number hit me like a slap. $25,000? Are you insane? Now, darling, don't be difficult. I've already made the reservations. You wouldn't want to embarrass me in front of everyone, would you? I gripped my desk, knuckles white. My credit card is maxed out, Michael. You know this because you're the one who maxed it. His laugh crackled through the phone, sharp and dismissive. Oh, that old story again? I told you I'd pay you back. Besides, you have other cards, which I've canceled. The words came out before I could stop them. The silence that followed was deafening. When he spoke again, his voice had lost all pretense of warmth. You did what? You heard me. I canceled them all except one, and that's for emergencies only. You stupid bitch. The mask dropped completely now. Do you have any idea what you've done? I needed those cards. I felt a strange calm settle over me. For what, Michael? More gifts for Sophie? Or was it Hannah this time? Another silence, longer this time. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, calculating his next move. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said finally, his voice steady but strained. "But you will show up tonight, and you will find a way to pay for this dinner. Otherwise, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of woman you really are." I laughed, surprising myself with how hollow it sounded. "And what kind of woman is that?" "A paranoid, controlling wife who can't handle her husband's success. I wonder what mother will think when she hears about your little jealous fantasies." Margaret, his mother, had always taken his side. Even when the evidence of his lies stared her in the face, she'd find ways to excuse him. Robert, his father, wasn't much better. Too wrapped up in his business empire to notice his son's growing web of deceit. "Fine," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I'll be there, 8 o'clock, right? 7:30? Don't be late." He hung up without waiting for my response. I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling something shift inside me. For 3 years, I'd watched him drain my accounts, make excuses, and gaslight me into believing I was the problem. 3 years of suspicious charges, mysterious business meetings, and perfume scents that weren't mine. Opening my drawer, I pulled out the manila envelope I'd been saving for the right moment. Inside were credit card statements, hotel receipts, and photographs. So many photographs. Sophie leaving his office late at night. Hannah at expensive restaurants, wearing jewelry bought with my money. Each piece of evidence carefully collected, dated, and organized. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel, my oldest friend. "You okay? You look like you're about to murder someone." I glanced up to see him watching me through the glass partition of his office, concern etched on his face. I typed back, "Not murder, something much worse." Tonight, at LeBlanc, surrounded by his family and their expectations, I would finally show Michael exactly what kind of woman I really was. And it wouldn't be the meek, forgiving wife he'd taken advantage of for so long. I touched the envelope gently, like a weapon I was finally ready to use. 7:30 couldn't come soon enough. LeBlanc's crystal chandeliers cast judgmental shadows across the white tablecloth as I watched Michael work the room. He moved between his parents with practiced charm, touching his mother's shoulder, laughing at his father's jokes. The perfect son. I gripped my wine glass tighter, knowing what was coming. "Elena, darling, you're so quiet tonight." Margaret's voice carried that hint of criticism she'd perfected over the years. "Is everything all right?" "Just tired from work," I said, forcing a smile. "The firm's been busy. Perhaps if you focused more on home life." She let the suggestion hang in the air like poison. Michael swooped in, all teeth and tailored suit. "Mother, you know how dedicated Elena is to her career." His hand found my shoulder, fingers digging in slightly, warning me. "Speaking of careers," Robert cut in, "Michael tells me you've been having some financial difficulties?" The restaurant seemed to still. I met Michael's gaze across the table, saw the slight shake of his head. "Don't you dare." "Actually," I said, reaching for my purse, "I wanted to discuss that." Michael's wine glass crashed to the floor. Red liquid spread across the pristine carpet like blood. "Clumsy me," he laughed, but his eyes were hard. "Elena, help me clean this up." He practically dragged me toward the restroom corridor, grip bruising my arm. "What do you think you're doing?" "Telling the truth for once?" I yanked free. "Someone has to." "You embarrass me tonight, and I swear." "You'll what? Max out another of my cards? Sleep with another colleague?" His face went still, that dangerous stillness I'd learned to recognize. "You're hysterical. This is exactly why I can't trust you with our finances." "Our finances?" I laughed. "You mean my savings that you've been bleeding dry?" "Everything I've done has been for us, for our future." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "But you're too selfish to see that." "Michael," Margaret's voice floated from around the corner. "Is everything okay?" He immediately softened his expression, the mask sliding back into place. "Fine, Mother. Elena's just feeling unwell." I watched him transform, saw how easily he switched between personas. It made me sick. Back at the table, Robert was deep in conversation about the company's latest acquisition. The merger's going through next month. Michael's been instrumental in making it happen. Yes, I said, unfolding my napkin. He's been working very late hours recently, especially with Sophie in accounting. Michael's fork clattered against his plate. Margaret frowned. Sophie? I don't believe I've met her. Oh, she's quite memorable, I continued, ignoring Michael's glare. Blonde, 28, favors Cartier jewelry, particularly the bracelet Michael bought her last month. Elena, Michael's voice was warning thunder. Or was that for Hannah? I get confused sometimes, tracking all these charges. Robert's bushy eyebrows drew together. What exactly are you implying? Nothing, Father, Michael cut in. Elena's been under a lot of stress lately, imagining things. Am I? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos. Should we discuss the hotel receipts, the mysterious weekend conferences that only you seem to attend? Margaret's hand flew to her throat. Michael, she's lying, he snapped, but sweat beaded his forehead. She's always been jealous of my success. Success? I felt eerily calm now. Is that what we're calling fraud these days? The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Robert's face darkened. What fraud? Michael stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. This dinner is over. Elena's clearly not well. Sit down. Robert's voice cut through the restaurant's murmur. Both of you. I watched Michael's face as he slowly sank back into his chair. For the first time, I saw fear crack through his perfect facade. Now, Robert continued, someone is going to tell me exactly what's going on with my company's finances. I reached for my purse, where the manila envelope waited. Michael's hand shot out to stop me, but it was too late. The evidence of his betrayal was already spreading across the pristine tablecloth, like the wine stain on the carpet behind us. Sometimes karma needs a little push, and I was done being patient. The silence in Robert's home office felt like a noose tightening. I watched him examine each credit card statement, each hotel receipt, his face growing darker with every page. Michael sat beside me, leg bouncing, his usual swagger replaced by something closer to fear. $200,000. Robert's voice was deadly quiet, transferred from company accounts to personal expenses over the past year. I can explain, Michael started, but Robert held up his hand. To jewelry stores, hotels, restaurants. He picked up a particular receipt. A weekend at the Four Seasons, under business development. Margaret stood by the window, her back to us all. She hadn't spoken since we'd left the restaurant. The company's doing well, Michael said. I've earned some perks. Perks? Robert slammed his hand on the desk. You're stealing from your own family. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a specific email. There's more. Michael lunged for my phone, but I was faster. Elena, don't. An email from Sophie to Hannah, I read, my voice steady despite my racing heart, discussing how to divide their bonuses from Michael. Margaret turned sharply. What bonuses? Hush money, I said, to keep quiet about their affairs. You're lying. Michael's voice cracked. She's making this up, Mother. You know how jealous. Stop. Margaret's voice was ice. I saw the way Sophie looked at you at the Christmas party. I didn't want to believe. A knock at the door made us all jump. Ethan, Michael's business partner, stepped in, his face grim. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. The SEC is asking questions about recent transfers. The color drained from Michael's face. What questions? They've flagged several large transactions as suspicious. Something about patterns consistent with embezzlement. Robert stood slowly, his hands shaking. You didn't just steal from us. You put the entire company at risk. I was going to pay it back. Michael's composure finally shattered. Everything was under control until he jabbed a finger at me, started meddling. Under control. I pulled out one final document. Like the gambling debts you've been hiding? Margaret gasped. Robert snatched the paper from my hands, his eyes widening as he read. $500,000. His voice was barely a whisper. To underground betting rings. Michael slumped in his chair, defeated. I had a system. I just needed more time. Time, Ethan interrupted. We don't have time. The SEC wants answers by Monday. Get out. Robert's voice was like gravel. Get out of my house, and don't come back until you've spoken to our lawyers. Father, please, now. Michael stood on shaky legs, looking to his mother for support. But Margaret had turned back to the window, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. As he stumbled toward the door, he paused beside me. You've destroyed everything, he hissed. I hope you're happy. I met his gaze steadily. No, Michael, you did this yourself. I just showed everyone who you really are. After he left, Robert collapsed into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 62 years. Elena, I owe you an apology. We all do. Don't. I stood, gathering my things. I didn't do this for apologies. I did it because someone had to stop him. What happens now? Margaret asked, finally turning to face us. Ethan cleared his throat. The company will need to conduct an internal audit, and Michael, well, he'll likely face criminal charges. I headed for the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. There's a recording, I said quietly, of Michael threatening me when I discovered the first affair, and documentation of every unauthorized charge, every manipulation. When you're ready to move forward with legal action, call me. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. You okay? I looked back at the house, where I'd just destroyed my husband's carefully constructed world of lies. The strange thing was, I didn't feel victorious, just tired, and ready for whatever came next. No, I typed back, but I will be. Because this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of Michael's long fall from grace, and I intended to watch every moment of it. The police station's fluorescent lights made everything look sickly and unreal. I sat across from Detective Morris, watching her flip through the evidence I'd gathered against Michael. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, even though I'd rehearsed this moment countless times. Mrs. Anderson, she said, setting down a particularly damning bank statement. This goes beyond simple fraud. I know, my voice sounded hollow, even to me. We're looking at potential money laundering, tax evasion, and, she paused, studying a new document. Connections to illegal gambling operations. Your husband's been busy. The word husband made my stomach turn. Ex-husband, soon. My phone buzzed. Daniel again. Sophie's looking for you. Says it's urgent. I ignored it. Sophie could wait. I'd given her enough already. The recordings, the paper trail, her precious immunity deal. Detective Morris leaned forward. There's something else. We found transfers to offshore accounts we can't trace, large ones. That's not possible. I'd tracked every penny. I would have seen. These are sophisticated, professional. She slid a paper across the desk. Someone's been helping him hide money for years. Someone who knows what they're doing. The implications hit me like a physical blow. I thought of Ethan, Michael's supposedly loyal business partner, who'd seemed so shocked by the SEC investigation. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number. You don't know the whole story. Meet me at Riverside Park, now. E. Mrs. Anderson, Detective Morris was watching me carefully. Is there something you're not telling me? I stood, gathering my coat. I need some air. We're not finished. I'll be back. There's just something I need to check. The park was deserted this late, wind whipping off the river. Ethan stood by the railing, looking older than his 40 years. You helped him. I didn't bother with pleasantries. All this time you knew. It's not that simple. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Michael has something on me, on all of us. What do you mean, all of us? The company's been dirty for years, Robert included. He laughed bitterly. Why do you think Michael got away with so much? His father taught him everything he knows. My world tilted sideways. Robert, the stern patriarch who'd seemed so shocked by his son's crimes. You're lying. Check the offshore account, ending in 4891. That's where the real money is. Robert's retirement fund, built on decades of fraud. My phone buzzed again. Sophie. Michael knows you're talking to the police. He's going to pin everything on you, claims you were the mastermind, has documents to prove it. Why are you telling me this? I asked Ethan. Because tomorrow, the SEC isn't just coming for Michael. They're coming for all of us. He handed me a USB drive. This has everything, every transaction, every player, including proof that you had nothing to do with it. Why help me now? Because you're the only one who tried to stop it. He turned to leave, then paused. Elena, be careful. Michael's not the only one with something to lose. I drove home in a daze. The USB drive, burning a hole in my pocket. My phone kept buzzing. Daniel, Sophie, unknown numbers. I ignored them all. At home, I poured a glass of wine with trembling hands and plugged in the drive. Document after document filled my screen, each one worse than the last. Robert's signature, Margaret's silent complicity, Ethan's careful bookkeeping, a family business built on lies, with Michael as just the latest in a long line of corrupt inheritors. A knock at my door made me jump. Through the peephole, I saw Margaret, her face streaked with tears. Elena, please, we need to talk. I rested my forehead against the door, thinking of all the times she'd defended Michael, all the years she'd known exactly what was happening. Elena, her voice cracked. They're arresting Robert tomorrow. Michael's threatening to tell them everything, about all of us, about you. I thought of Detective Morris, waiting for my return, of the evidence I'd so carefully gathered, never realizing I was only seeing the surface of a much darker truth. My phone buzzed one final time. Michael, last chance to make a deal, darling. Meet me at midnight, or everyone goes down, including you. I looked at the USB drive, then at my phone. In trying to expose one man's lies, I'd stumbled into a conspiracy that could destroy everyone involved, myself included. The question was, how far was I willing to go to see justice done? The hotel bar was nearly empty when Sophie slid into the seat beside me. Her designer perfume couldn't mask the fear rolling off her in waves. They're watching all of us, she whispered, fingers trembling around her martini glass. Michael's not just angry anymore, he's desperate. I studied her perfectly manicured nails, remembering the credit card statements for the salon visits I'd paid for. Why should I care? Because Hannah's dead. The words hung between us like smoke. My glass stopped halfway to my lips. Car accident, Sophie continued, her voice barely audible. Last night. Very convenient timing, don't you think? My phone buzzed. Daniel, where are you? Michael's looking for you. He's not alone. What did Hannah know? I asked Sophie, ignoring the message. Everything. She glanced over her shoulder. The offshore accounts, the gambling debts, the real reason Robert's been moving money through shell companies. She was going to talk to the SEC. The bartender drifted closer. Sophie fell silent until he passed. Michael called me this morning, she said. Offered to clear my debts if I signed an affidavit saying you were behind everything, that you manipulated company records, forced him to make those transfers. My laugh sounded hollow. And you're telling me this out of the goodness of your heart? I'm telling you because Hannah was my friend. Her mascara smeared as she wiped her eyes. And because they're coming for you next. My phone buzzed again. Margaret, Robert's gone, emptied the accounts, left a note saying he's sorry. The room seemed to tilt. When did Hannah tell you about the accounts? She didn't. Sophie's smile was sharp as broken glass. But you just confirmed they exist. I stood so quickly my chair scraped across the floor. Sophie grabbed my wrist, her nails digging in. Sit down, she hissed. Look at the man by the door, the one pretending to read. I saw him now. Dark suit, earpiece poorly hidden. Another one at the bar, watching us in the mirror. Michael's not working alone anymore, Sophie said. The people he owes money to, they want their investment protected. Hannah threatened that protection. My phone, unknown number. Your friend Daniel is very cooperative when properly motivated. Midnight, the old warehouse. Come alone. Let go of my arm, I said quietly. Sophie released me, leaving crescent marks in my skin. You started this war, Elena. Did you really think there wouldn't be casualties? I walked out, forcing myself not to run. The man by the door spoke into his sleeve as I passed. In the parking lot, a black SUV idled 2 spaces from my car. My phone rang. Michael. Hello, darling. His voice was silk over steel. Having drinks with friends? What did you do to Daniel? Nothing permanent, yet. A pause. You know, it's funny. All this time trying to expose my secrets, and you never wondered about your precious friend's connection to everything. What are you talking about? Ask him about the offshore account transfers. Ask him who really helped set them up. Michael's laugh was soft. Oh, wait, you can't. He's a bit tied up at the moment. The SUV's engine revved. Midnight, Elena, bring the USB drive and every copy of the evidence you've collected, or Daniel won't be the only one paying for your curiosity. The line went dead. I sat in my car, hands gripping the wheel, mind racing. Daniel, my oldest friend, my confidant through all of this, had he been playing both sides? Another text from Sophie. Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. Hannah thought she could outsmart them too. I started the engine, watching the SUV pull out behind me in the rearview mirror. 6 hours until midnight. 6 hours to decide who to trust, who to sacrifice, who to save. My phone buzzed one last time. Ethan. SEC moved up the timeline. They're raiding the offices tomorrow morning. Whatever you're going to do it now. I thought of Hannah, of Daniel, of all the pieces I'd thought I understood. The revenge I'd wanted had seemed so simple at first. Now it was a hydra, growing 2 new heads for everyone I cut off. The SUV stayed 3 cars behind as I drove, its headlights watching like patient eyes. I had until midnight to make a choice. Save myself, save Daniel, or burn the whole thing down and hope I survived the flames. The warehouse waited in the distance. A dark promise against the setting sun. The warehouse air reeked of rust and betrayal. Daniel sat tied to a chair in the center, his face a mess of bruises. 2 men in dark suits flanked him, while Michael leaned against a stack of crates, examining his phone with casual indifference. Right on time, he said, not looking up. Did you bring it? I held up the USB drive. Let him go first. That's not how this works anymore. Michael finally met my gaze, and I saw something new there, something unhinged. Show me what's on it. One of the suits produced a laptop. I plugged in the drive, watching Michael's face as he scrolled through the files. His expression darkened. Where are the offshore accounts, the transfer records? Gone. I forced myself to smile. Just like Robert. Michael's hand shot out, grabbing my throat. Don't play games with me, not now. Michael, Daniel's voice was hoarse. She doesn't know everything. I never told her. Shut up. Michael's grip tightened. You had one job. Keep her distracted, keep her close, feed me information. And you couldn't even do that right. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Daniel's constant support, his convenient presence throughout my investigation. I'd been so blind. Elena. Daniel's eyes were pleading. I had to. They threatened my family. But I tried to protect you. By helping them track me? My laugh came out as a wheeze against Michael's grip. By reporting every move I made? Enough. Michael released me, turning to the suits. Search her car. She must have backup copies somewhere. As they left, Michael's phone buzzed. His face went pale as he read the message. The SEC. He threw the phone against the wall. They're moving in tonight. Someone tipped them off. His eyes narrowed. What did you do? Nothing. I rubbed my throat. But Sophie's been busy. Sophie. For the first time, real fear crossed his face. What are you talking about? Check your precious offshore account, the one ending in 4891. I watched comprehension dawn. She transferred everything an hour ago to Hannah's sister. Hannah's dead, he snapped. Yes, and her sister's a federal prosecutor. I felt a cold satisfaction seeing him unravel. Sophie made a deal, full immunity in exchange for everything she knows, which is apparently a lot more than you thought. Michael lunged for me, but Daniel somehow broke free, tackling him. They crashed into the crates as the suits rushed back in, weapons drawn. Nobody move. one shouted. But Michael was beyond reason. He grabbed something from the fallen crates, a metal pipe, and swung it at Daniel's head. The crack echoed through the warehouse. Daniel crumpled. "No!" I screamed, running to him. Blood pooled beneath his head. "It's your fault," Michael was saying, his voice distant and strange. "All of this. You couldn't just stay quiet, play your part. Now look what you made me do." Sirens wailed in the distance. The suits exchanged glances and fled, leaving Michael standing over us, pipe still in hand. "They're coming for you," I said, cradling Daniel's motionless form. "All of them. SEC, FBI, Hannah's sister. It's over." "Nothing's over." He raised the pipe again. "I can still fix this. One more accident, one more loose end." The warehouse doors burst open. Margaret stood there, holding a gun with shaking hands. "Michael," she said, her voice breaking. "Put it down." "Mother?" He laughed, high and unnatural. "Come to save your precious daughter-in-law?" "I came to stop you from becoming your father." She stepped closer. "Robert killed himself an hour ago, in a hotel room in Singapore. I won't watch you follow him." Michael's face contorted. "You're lying." "The note's in my car, along with copies of everything. Every crime, every cover-up, going back 30 years. Her finger tightened on the trigger. "Drop it, Michael, please." The pipe clattered to the floor. As police lights flooded the warehouse, I held Daniel's cooling body and watched my husband collapse into himself, becoming something small and broken under the weight of his own destruction. The revenge I'd wanted had cost me everything. Daniel, my safety, my belief in justice. And as the officers swarmed in, I realized the true price of vengeance wasn't paid by its target, but by everyone caught in its wake. The night wasn't over, but I was. The courthouse corridor felt like a funeral home. I sat on the hard bench, watching Michael pace in his expensive suit, all his swagger reduced to nervous energy. The SEC investigation had frozen his accounts, but Lily's diamond bracelet still glinted on her wrist as she whispered in his ear. Sophie appeared at the far end of the hall, flanked by federal agents. Her designer heels clicked like a countdown. "Last chance, Elena." Michael's voice was low, desperate. "Tell them you orchestrated everything. I'll make sure you're taken care of. Like you took care of Hannah." His face twitched. Lily stepped back, suddenly uncertain. "Michael," she asked, "what's she talking about?" "Nothing, darling. Elena's just bitter." "Show her the phone, Lily." I stood, feeling strangely calm. "The one he bought you last week. Check the GPS history for the night Hannah died." Lily's perfectly manicured hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. Michael lunged for it, but one of the agents stepped between them. "That's enough, Mr. Anderson." Margaret's voice cut through the tension. She approached from the courtroom, holding a manila envelope. "The judge is ready for us." "Mother, please." Michael's mask cracked completely. "You can't do this to your own son." "You did this yourself." She handed the envelope to the federal prosecutor. "Everything's here. 30 years of fraud, including Robert's suicide note. And this," she pulled out a single photograph, "is from the traffic camera near Hannah's accident." The image showed Michael's car, the timestamp matching the night of Hannah's death. "You said you were with me that night," Lily whispered, backing away. "You said—" "He says a lot of things." Sophie had reached us, her testimony folder clutched like a shield. "Ask him about the offshore account he set up in your name. The one he's using to frame you for tax evasion." The color drained from Lily's face. "What?" "It's what he does," I said quietly. "Uses people until they're no longer useful, then discards them. Hannah threatened to expose him, so she had an accident. Daniel got too close to the truth, so—" "Shut up." Michael's composure shattered. He grabbed Lily's arm. Tell them I was with you that night." But Lily was already pulling away, tears streaking her makeup. "You killed her? And tried to set me up to take the fall?" "The judge is waiting." The prosecutor stepped forward. "Miss Chen's testimony about the offshore accounts matches our evidence exactly. Combined with Mrs. Anderson's documentation and the new evidence from Mrs. Margaret Anderson, Michael's laugh was hollow. Evidence from my own mother. She's grief-stricken, delusional. I'm quite lucid, Margaret interrupted. Lucid enough to wear a wire during our last 3 conversations, including your confession about Hannah. The hallway went silent. Michael looked around wildly, like a trapped animal. His eyes landed on me. You. He moved faster than the agents could react, his hands finding my throat. You turned them all against me. Then Lily's phone clattered to the floor, video playing. Michael's own voice confessing to Hannah's murder. GPS data confirming his location. He'd accidentally recorded everything on the phone he'd given her, thinking he was covering his tracks. The agents pulled him off me as he screamed accusations, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. Lily fled down the hallway, Sophie smirked, and Margaret just looked tired. The thing about lies, Michael, I rasped, rubbing my throat, is that they multiply like a cancer until they destroy everything they touch. Mrs. Anderson? The prosecutor gestured toward the courtroom. We're ready for your testimony. I gathered my evidence folder, thinner now, most of its contents already submitted to the SEC and FBI. The case against Michael was airtight: fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and now murder. His own arrogance had built the trap. I'd just helped him walk into it. Elena, his voice was different now, small, almost childlike. Please, don't do this. I thought of Daniel in his hospital bed, still unconscious, of Hannah's sister, waiting inside to see justice done, of all the lives Michael had casually destroyed in his pursuit of power and control. I'm not doing anything, Michael. This is just karma catching up. The courtroom doors opened, and I walked through without looking back. Behind me, I heard him break down completely, his sobs echoing through the corridor like the ghost of everything he'd lost. Sometimes revenge isn't about what you do. It's about stepping back and letting someone's own actions destroy them. The prison visiting room smelled of disinfectant and defeat. Michael sat across from me in his orange jumpsuit, the confident mask finally stripped away. Through the window behind him, snow fell on the exercise yard, covering everything in clean white silence. 20 years, he said, his voice hollow, plus restitution. I placed the divorce papers on the metal table between us. Sign them. His hand trembled as he reached for the pen. Was it worth it? Destroying everything we built. We didn't build anything, Michael. You constructed a fantasy, and I lived in it until I couldn't anymore. The pen scratched across paper. Each signature felt like a key turning in a lock. Daniel's awake, I said, watching his reaction. He remembers everything. Michael's pen paused. I never meant to get caught, to kill Hannah, to ruin your father. I collected the signed papers. That's the problem. You never meant for any of it to happen, but you kept making choices that led here. Elena, he reached across the table, but I pulled back. What happened to us? You happened to us. And now you're happening to yourself. Outside, Margaret waited in her car, engine running against the cold. She'd aged years in months, but her eyes were clearer now. It's done? She asked as I slid into the passenger seat. I nodded, watching the prison shrink in the side mirror. He signed everything, the restitution agreement, too. Hannah's sister gets control of the recovered assets. Good. She pulled onto the highway. The company board voted this morning. They're restructuring, keeping the legitimate parts. Ethan's cooperating with the investigation. My phone buzzed, a message from Sophie. Lily's gone to the DA, says she has more recordings. I deleted it without responding. Sophie had played her part, but I was done with all of them. The house sold, Margaret said quietly, above asking price. The house where Michael had built his web of lies, where I'd lived in beautiful ignorance until the cracks appeared. Someone else would sleep there now, unaware of the ghosts in every room. What will you do now? Margaret asked. I touched the envelope in my bag. Not the divorce papers, but the other one. The one containing proof of my own secret. Documentation of every dollar I'd managed to recover. Traced through shell companies and offshore accounts. Money that even Michael didn't know existed. Hidden by Robert before his death. Start over, I said. Somewhere new, she nodded, understanding more than I'd said. You know, revenge is supposed to feel empty. That's what they say, that it doesn't bring peace. This isn't about peace. I watched the snow erase the world outside. It's about truth. Everything hidden eventually comes to light. My phone buzzed again. Daniel. Coffee tomorrow. Doctor says I can have visitors now. I hesitated, then typed back. Rain check. Taking care of something first. Because Daniel had betrayed me too, even if he'd had his reasons. Even if he'd tried to protect me in the end. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. Margaret pulled up to the airport departures terminal. You don't have to disappear, she said. Not everyone in your life was false. No, I gathered my single bag. But everyone was changed by it. She touched my arm before I could leave. The board transferred the recovered funds to your account this morning. Robert's hidden assets, legitimately claimed. You could rebuild here. I thought of Michael in his prison cell, of Sophie playing all sides, of Lily's desperate grab for immunity, of Daniel in his hospital bed, trying to make amends for choices that couldn't be undone. Sometimes, I said, rebuilding means walking away. The terminal was quiet, holiday travelers long gone. At the counter, my new passport waited, the final piece of preparation I'd made, while everyone else was focused on Michael's downfall. Because revenge wasn't just about destroying someone else's lies. It was about reclaiming your own truth. I checked in for a flight to a city I'd never seen, under a name that had never been touched by Michael's deceit. Behind me, Margaret's car disappeared into the snow, carrying the last witness to who I used to be. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't what you take from others, but what you keep for yourself. The power to write your own ending.
The trunk of our Mercedes clicked shut with a hollow thud. Daniel tossed the last suitcase in while I buckled Mia into her car seat, both of us eager to head home after a long weekend at his parents' lake house. The late afternoon sun cast strange shadows across the driveway, making everything feel slightly off-kilter. Ready for the drive home, sweetie? I asked, adjusting Mia's favorite stuffed rabbit in her lap. She nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed on something behind me. I'd noticed she'd been unusually quiet all afternoon, barely touching her lunch and keeping to herself while the adults packed up. At 6, she was typically a chatterbox, but today felt different. Daniel slid into the driver's seat, checking his phone before starting the engine. 3 hours till home. Everyone good? I settled into the passenger seat, already dreading the long drive. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was the way Daniel kept checking his rearview mirror, or how his knuckles seemed whiter than usual on the steering wheel. The first hour passed in relative silence, broken only by the soft hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional ping from Daniel's phone. I pretended to read on mine, but really, I was watching him from the corner of my eye. His jaw clenched every time his phone lit up, and he'd shift slightly in his seat, as if trying to angle the screen away from me. Elizabeth, Mia's small voice came from the back seat, barely above a whisper. The girl in the trunk is asking to be let out. The car swerved slightly. Daniel's hands jerked on the wheel, and I grabbed the door handle, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. What did you say, honey? I turned to look at her, trying to keep my voice steady. Mia's face was dead serious, her brown eyes wide and unblinking. The girl in the trunk, she wants out, she's scared. Daniel let out a forced laugh. Sweetheart, there's nobody in the trunk, just our bags. But his voice cracked on the last word, and I noticed a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. The air in the car felt thick, almost suffocating. Pull over, I said. Don't be ridiculous, Elizabeth. It's just her imagination. Pull over, Daniel. Now. He kept driving, his speed increasing slightly. We're already running late, and I said pull over. My voice came out sharper than I intended, making Mia flinch in her seat. Daniel's jaw worked back and forth, but he gradually eased the car onto the shoulder of the highway. Before he could fully stop, I was already unbuckling my seatbelt. "Stay in the car with Mia," I ordered, stepping out into the cooling evening air. My hands trembled as I walked to the back of the car. Daniel got out too, following close behind me. "This is absurd," he said, but there was an edge to his voice I'd never heard before. "You're scaring Mia with this nonsense." I reached for the trunk release, but he grabbed my wrist. His grip was tight enough to hurt. "Let go of me," I said quietly, meeting his eyes. In that moment, I saw something there that made my blood run cold. Fear, guilt, desperation. He released my wrist slowly. Taking a step back, "Elizabeth, please, let's just get home." I pressed the button. The trunk popped open with a soft click. Bags. Just bags, like he said. But as I moved aside his golf clubs, I noticed something that made my stomach lurch. A woman's scarf, silk, in a shade of purple I'd never wear. And beneath it, a business card for the Grand Hotel downtown, room 412, written on the back in unfamiliar handwriting. "It's not what you think," Daniel said behind me, but I barely heard him over the roaring in my ears. From the backseat window, Mia watched us with those knowing eyes, and I realized this was just the beginning of something much darker than I could have imagined. That purple scarf haunted my dreams for 3 nights straight. I'd wake up in cold sweats, my fingers clutching at phantom silk, while Daniel slept soundly beside me, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I stood at our kitchen counter, mechanically packing Mia's lunch while watching Daniel through the window. He was on another early morning call, pacing the backyard in his tailored suit, gesturing with one hand while the other pressed his phone tight against his ear. Even from here, I could see the smile that never used to appear during work calls. "Is Daddy going away again?" Mia asked, her small hands wrapped around a glass of orange juice. I forced my fingers to relax their grip on the sandwich I was making. "What makes you say that, sweetheart?" "He has his special cologne on, the one for important meetings." My stomach clenched. I'd noticed that too. The expensive new fragrance he'd started wearing 6 months ago, right after his promotion. The one that sometimes clung to his shirts, even after they'd been washed. "Mommy?" Mia's voice pulled me back. "The lady in the trunk is sorry." The knife I was holding clattered against the counter. "What lady, Mia? What do you mean?" But Daniel chose that moment to stride back in, ending his call with a laugh that sounded nothing like him. "Ready for school, princess?" Mia's face closed off, something I'd never seen before our weekend trip. She nodded silently and slipped off her chair. "I'll take her today," I said, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "You have that big presentation, right?" Daniel's smile flickered. "Actually, I moved that to next week, heading to the downtown office for some meetings instead." Room 412 flashed through my mind. "Downtown? Which clients?" "Just internal stuff. Budget reviews, nothing exciting." He kissed my cheek, but his lips barely grazed my skin. "Don't wait up tonight. Dinner with the team." As he headed for the door, I noticed his overnight bag by the coat rack, the same one from our weekend trip, still unpacked. "Daniel?" He paused, hand on the doorknob. "You forgot to unpack from the weekend. Want me to do it?" His shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. "No need. I'll handle it later." After he left, I waited exactly 17 minutes before approaching the bag. My hands trembled as I unzipped it, but instead of evidence, I found nothing but his usual weekend clothes, neatly folded. Too neatly. Daniel had never folded anything in his life. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Coffee, you've been MIA since the weekend." 20 minutes later, I sat across from my best friend at our usual cafe, watching her face as I recounted everything. Mia's strange comments, the scarf, the hotel card, Daniel's behavior. "Jesus, Elizabeth." Rachel set down her cup. "Have you checked his phone? Credit card statements?" "Not yet. I'm afraid of what I'll find. Or afraid you won't find anything and you'll feel crazy. She leaned forward. Listen, I've known you both for 15 years. Daniel's changed since that promotion. The late nights, the new clothes, the sudden business trips, the perfume, I added quietly. Rachel's eyebrows shot up. What perfume? Sometimes, when he hugs me goodbye, there's this faint scent. Floral, expensive, not mine. Sophie, Rachel said, then immediately pressed her lips together. My blood ran cold. What did you say? Nothing, Rachel. She sighed, reaching across the table to grab my hand. Sophie Turner. She's the new VP of Marketing at Daniel's company. They've been working closely on some big campaign. How do you know this? Tom mentioned it at dinner last week. Said Daniel and Sophie have been pulling all-nighters at the office, really impressing the board with their dedication. I pulled my hand away, feeling sick. All-nighters. Elizabeth, maybe it's not. She's 30, I cut in. Young, ambitious, probably beautiful. You don't know anything for sure. But I did know. I knew it in the way Mia looked at her father now, in the careful distance Daniel kept between us, in the purple silk that felt like a noose around my throat. I need to go, I said, standing abruptly. Mia's school lets out early today. Rachel grabbed my arm. Don't do anything rash. I smiled, and something in my expression made her let go. I won't. I'm just going to start paying very close attention. As I walked to my car, I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app Daniel thought I never used. Time to see exactly what kind of meetings he'd been having downtown. The credit card statements painted a picture I couldn't unsee. Grand Hotel downtown, twice a week for the past 4 months. Restaurant charges for 2 at places Daniel claimed were business meetings. A jewelry store receipt from last month. No gift had ever made its way to me. I sat in my parked car outside his office building, watching the evening crowd filter out. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Mia's words from that morning echoed in my head. The lady says she's going to take Daddy away. A flash of purple caught my eye. A woman emerged from the revolving doors, her dark hair falling in perfect waves. Young, beautiful, exactly as I'd imagined. Sophie. She paused on the steps, checking her phone with a slight smile. The same smile I'd seen in Daniel's recent photos, always cropped just enough to hide her face. My phone buzzed. Daniel. Working late again, don't wait up. 3 minutes later, he walked out, adjusting his tie. They didn't leave together. She went left, he went right. But I knew where they'd end up. I followed his car, keeping 3 vehicles between us. The familiar route to the Grand Hotel made my stomach churn. As he pulled into the parking garage, I drove past, circling the block once before parking across the street. Room 412. Their regular room, according to the hotel charges. I sat there, watching the building's gleaming facade, wondering how many other wives had done the same. My phone buzzed again. Rachel, did you find anything? I started typing a response when movement caught my eye. Sophie entering the hotel lobby, that purple scarf trailing behind her like a flag of victory. 5 minutes later, Daniel followed. Something snapped inside me. Before I could think, I was crossing the street, walking into the lobby with purpose. The young man at the front desk smiled professionally. I'm here to surprise my husband, I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. Daniel Martin. He's meeting a colleague in room 412. The clerk hesitated. I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't. Please, I cut in, pulling out my driver's license. I'm Elizabeth Martin. It's our anniversary. His face softened with sympathy. He probably saw this more often than he'd admit. 4th floor, end of the hall on the right. The elevator ride felt eternal. Each floor brought a new memory. Our wedding day, Mia's birth, family vacations, all tainted now by purple silk in room 412. I stood outside their door, hand raised to knock, when I heard laughter. Her laughter. Then Daniel's voice, lower than usual, saying something that made her giggle again. My phone buzzed. Mia's babysitter. Mia's asking for you. She seems upset. Reality crashed back. What was I doing here? What did I expect to accomplish by confronting them? This wasn't about catching them in the act. This was about something much bigger. I backed away from the door, my heels silent on the plush carpet. In the elevator, I caught my reflection, pale, shaking, but somehow stronger than I'd felt in months. Back home, I found Mia sitting on the stairs, waiting. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes too knowing for a 6-year-old. "The lady in purple is mean," she said simply. "She wants to hurt us." I sat beside her, pulling her close. "No one's going to hurt us, sweetheart. But I need you to tell me everything you know about the lady, everything you've seen." Mia's small hand found mine. "She comes in dreams, shows me things, bad things that haven't happened yet." "What kind of things?" "Daddy crying, you being angry, a car crash." She paused, looking up at me. "But we can change it, Mommy. The lady in the trunk told me so." I kissed her forehead, my mind racing. "We will, baby. We'll change everything." That night, after putting Mia to bed, I opened my laptop and began to plan. Daniel thought he was being careful with his secret meetings and hidden expenses, but he'd forgotten one thing. I used to work in corporate investigations before Mia was born, and now, watching him sleep peacefully beside me, I realized it was time to put those skills to use again. The purple scarf was just the beginning. By the time I was done, room 412 would be the least of their worries. The USB drive felt heavy in my pocket as I walked through the corporate lobby. My old investigator's badge, carefully preserved from my previous career, drew barely a glance from security. Amazing how a confident walk and professional attire could open so many doors. "Elizabeth?" A familiar voice stopped me near the elevators. Rachel stood there, clutching a portfolio, her face pale. "What are you doing here?" "Surprising Daniel for lunch," I lied smoothly. "You look like you've seen a ghost." She glanced around nervously. "We need to talk, not here." 10 minutes later, we sat in her car in the underground parking garage. Rachel's hands trembled as she pulled out a folder. "I wasn't sure whether to tell you," she started, "but after what you shared about Sophie," she handed me the folder. "Tom's firm handles the company's legal affairs. These documents weren't supposed to leave the office. Inside were transfer papers. Daniel's signature appeared multiple times, moving substantial sums to offshore accounts. Sophie's name was there too, listed as a co-beneficiary. "There's more," Rachel whispered. "They're planning to leave the country, next month. Together." My chest tightened. Mia's words about the car crash flashed through my mind. "Elizabeth?" Rachel touched my arm. "What are you going to do?" I slipped the folder into my bag. "Nothing yet. I need to get upstairs." "To do what?" "What I came here for." I pulled out my old badge. Sometimes you need to fight fire with fire. The executive floor was quiet when I reached it. Daniel's office door stood slightly ajar, his voice drifting out as he conducted a video call. I slipped past, heading for Sophie's office at the end of the hall. Her computer password took 3 attempts. Her birth date, according to the HR files I'd accessed earlier. Amateur. Within minutes, I'd plugged in the USB drive, downloading everything. Emails, financial records, private photos. A shadow fell across the desk. "Can I help you?" Sophie's voice was exactly as I'd imagined, smooth, confident, young. I turned slowly, smiling professionally. "Just IT support. Routine security update." She stepped closer, her purple blazer immaculate. "Funny, I don't remember requesting any updates." "Your husband did," I said quietly, watching her face. "Daniel Martin? Or did you think I wouldn't find out?" The color drained from her face. "I don't know what I'm talking about." I stood, pocketing the USB drive. "The Grand Hotel might disagree. Room 412 has quite a view, doesn't it?" Her composure cracked. "Listen, I can explain." "To who?" "The board, the SEC. I have enough evidence of financial fraud to bury both of you." "You're bluffing." I pulled out my phone, playing a recording, Daniel's voice discussing their escape plans, captured by the bug I'd planted in his car last week. My daughter, I said softly, keeps having visions of a car crash. Funny how children sometimes know things before they happen. Sophie's hand trembled as she reached for her desk phone. I wouldn't, I warned, unless you want these files sent to every board member right now. One click. I held up my phone. Your choice. The phone clattered back into its cradle. Smart girl. I moved toward the door. Oh, and Sophie, purple isn't your color. Back in my car, my hands finally started shaking. Rachel's text lit up my phone. Daniel's looking for you, says it's urgent. Another message popped up, from our babysitter. Mia won't stop crying, keeps saying something bad is coming. I started the engine, my mind racing. The evidence I'd gathered would destroy them both professionally. But Mia's warnings about the crash haunted me. Was I pushing too far, or not far enough? My phone rang. Daniel. I let it go to voicemail, then played his message. Elizabeth, we need to talk. I know you were in the building today. Whatever you think you know, please just come home. We can fix this. Fix this, as if our marriage was just another business deal he could negotiate. I pulled out of the parking garage into the rain, heading for Mia's school. Behind me, a car engine revved aggressively. In my rearview mirror, I caught a flash of purple. Sophie's car, gaining speed. Mia's voice echoed in my head. A car crash. But we can change it, Mummy. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, watching Sophie's car weave through traffic toward me. Time to find out if my daughter's visions could really be changed. The call came during Mia's ballet class. My mother had collapsed at the grocery store. Massive heart attack. By the time I reached the hospital, she was gone. Just like that, as if the universe needed to pile on one more cruel joke. I stood in the hospital corridor, my phone buzzing with Daniel's messages. In a meeting, can't get away, handle the arrangements. Handle the arrangements. Like it was just another task on his to-do list. Mia sat in the plastic chair beside me, her ballet tutu still on, small fingers tracing patterns on the armrest. Grandma says she's sorry she didn't warn us. My head snapped up. What did you say? She's here. Mia pointed to the empty chair across from us. She says to check her garden shed. There's something you need to see. That night, after leaving Mia with Rachel, I drove to my mother's house. The garden shed's key was where it had always been, under a ceramic frog. Inside, beneath gardening tools and old flower pots, I found a locked metal box. The combination was my birthday. Mom had always been sentimental that way. Inside were letters, dozens of them, recent ones, all addressed to me, never sent. As I read, my hands began to shake. Elizabeth, I've seen him with her, the young woman in purple. I didn't know how to tell you. He reminds me so much of your father before he left. The last letter was dated 3 days ago. I confronted him today. He laughed it off, but there was something in his eyes that scared me. Be careful, sweetheart. People who hide secrets that deep can be dangerous when cornered. My phone lit up. Daniel again. Where are you? We need to talk about the funeral arrangements. I texted back. Mom's house, cleaning out some things. His response came quickly. Stay there, coming to help. 20 minutes later, headlights swept across the shed window. I heard car doors, plural. Voices drifted through the evening air. Are you sure she knows? Sophie's voice. The way she looked at me today. We need those letters. Daniel's reply sent ice through my veins. They knew. Somehow they knew about Mom's letters. Had they been watching her too? I slipped the letters into my jacket and moved deeper into the shed's shadows. Through a crack in the door, I watched them approach the house. Daniel tried his key. The one Mom had asked him to return months ago, claiming she'd lost it. Check the garden, he ordered Sophie. Her mother was always puttering around out here. Sophie's heels clicked on the path, getting closer to the shed. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding. The doorknob turned. A child's voice cut through the darkness. Daddy? Why are you at Grandma's house? Mia stood in the garden, still in her ballet clothes. Rachel stood behind her, arms crossed. I thought you were handling the funeral arrangements, Rachel said, her voice sharp with accusation. Daniel stepped away from the house. We were just... We? Rachel's eyebrows rose as Sophie emerged from behind a hedge. The lady in purple, Mia said clearly. The one from the trunk. Grandma says she's dangerous. Sophie's face went white. What is she talking about? I pushed open the shed door, letters clutched to my chest. She's talking about you, Sophie. You and Daniel, and how you both knew my mother was on to you. Daniel moved toward me, hands raised. Elizabeth, whatever you think. She had a heart attack right after confronting you. My voice cracked. What did you say to her, Daniel? What did you do? Nothing. It was just a coincidence. Like the offshore accounts, the escape plans, the convenient timing of her death. Sophie backed away, her purple blazer luminous in the gathering dark. Daniel, you said this would be simple. Simple? I laughed, and the sound frightened even me. Was that before or after you decided my mother needed to be silenced? Mia tugged at Rachel's hand. The lady in the trunk is crying now. She says she's sorry. Stop saying that. Sophie's composure shattered. There was never anyone in any trunk. But Mia just stared at her, those knowing eyes seeing right through to whatever truth lay buried beneath Sophie's perfect facade. I pulled out my phone, finger hovering over a number. The police would be very interested in these letters, and the financial records, and maybe a toxicology report on my mother. Daniel lunged for the phone. In the chaos that followed, I heard Mia scream, not in fear but in warning, and suddenly I understood what she'd been trying to tell me all along. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about survival. The toxicology report arrived 3 days after Mom's funeral. Daniel hadn't bothered to attend, claimed he was stuck in meetings. Sophie had sent flowers, though, purple orchids. The irony wasn't lost on me. Traces of digitalis, the medical examiner said over the phone. Foxglove, common garden plant, but lethal in the right dose. Could be accidental. But we both knew it wasn't. Mom's garden didn't have foxglove, never had. I sat in my car outside the Grand Hotel, watching the entrance through a haze of exhaustion. 3 nights of surveillance had revealed their pattern, every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork. Room 412. My phone buzzed. Rachel. Police called. They're closing the investigation, natural causes. Of course they were. Daniel's company had half the city's officials in their pocket. Another message popped up from the babysitter. Mia's fever's getting worse. Should I take her to the hospital? My hand trembled on the steering wheel. Mia had been sick since the confrontation at Mom's house. The doctors couldn't explain it, but she kept talking about the lady in the trunk, now more than ever. Sophie's car pulled into the parking garage. 10 minutes later, Daniel's followed. Like a well-rehearsed dance. I pulled out the USB drive containing everything. The financial records, Mom's letters, the toxicology report, surveillance photos. One email to the board of directors would destroy them both. My finger hovered over the send button when a tap on my window made me jump. Mrs. Martin? A man in a suit stood there, badge visible. Detective Collins? Mind stepping out of the car? 2 more officers approached from behind. A setup. Elizabeth Martin, you're under investigation for corporate espionage and cyberstalking. We have a warrant to search your vehicle. Let me guess, I said, stepping out. Daniel's lawyers called? The detective's face remained impassive. We received evidence of unauthorized access to private corporate files and concerning behavior following your mother's death. They found the surveillance equipment in my trunk, the photos, the USB drive, everything I'd gathered over weeks of careful planning, gone in minutes. Your daughter's quite imaginative, Detective Collins said, examining my phone. All these notes about someone in trunks. Your husband's concerned about her mental state, and yours. He killed my mother, I whispered. Your mother died of natural causes, Mrs. Martin. The medical examiner confirmed it. He paused. Though your recent internet searches about digitalis are interesting. My blood ran cold. They'd twisted everything around, made me look like the unstable one, the threat. My phone rang. The babysitter again. Mia's asking for you. She's crying about the lady in purple hurting someone else. I need to go, I said. My daughter's sick. Of course. Detective Collins smiled without warmth. But first, we'll need you to come down to the station, just to clear a few things up. 3 hours of questioning later, they released me with a warning and a temporary restraining order. I couldn't go near Daniel, Sophie, or their officers. Any evidence I had was now part of an ongoing investigation. I rushed to Rachel's house, where she'd taken Mia after the babysitter called. She's sleeping, Rachel whispered, leading me to the guest room. But Elizabeth, there's something else. She handed me her tablet. On the screen was an article from 6 years ago. Young woman's disappearance remains unsolved. The photo showed a girl in her 20s, another of Daniel's employees, another affair exposed. She vanished after threatening to go public, Rachel said quietly. They found her car at a train station. Case went cold. The girl in the trunk, I breathed. Elizabeth. Rachel gripped my arm. What if Mia isn't just imagining things? What if she's trying to warn us? In the guest room, Mia stirred in her fever sleep. Mommy, she murmured, the lady says we're running out of time. I touched her burning forehead, remembering Mom's last letter. People who hide secrets that deep can be dangerous when cornered. My phone lit up with a final message from Daniel. It's over, Elizabeth. Don't make this worse than it already is. But as I watched Mia toss in her troubled sleep, I realized it was far from over. I'd been playing their game, surveillance, evidence, legal channels. But they'd already rigged those rules. Time to make some new ones. The Mercedes purred along the coastal highway, Daniel behind the wheel, thinking this was his idea. A reconciliation drive, he'd called it. Just the three of us, like old times. Mia sat in her car seat, unusually quiet, watching the sunset paint the ocean blood red. I kept my hands folded in my lap, feeling the weight of the USB drive in my pocket, the one copy the police hadn't found. You've been reasonable about everything, Daniel said, breaking the silence. The restraining order, the investigation, I appreciate that. I smiled, remembering the missing girl's photo. Tell me about Jessica Porter. His hands tightened on the wheel. Who? The girl who disappeared 6 years ago, your previous assistant. Ancient history, he muttered. Office gossip. The lady says she's cold, Mia whispered from the back seat. She's always cold now. Daniel's face went ash white. Stop it, Mia. Stop saying things like that. Pull over, I said quietly. Elizabeth, pull over or I send these files to every board member right now. I held up my phone, including the ones about Jessica. He guided the car into a scenic overlook, empty except for one other vehicle, Sophie's purple BMW. You planned this, he accused, like you planned Mom's garden visit. His laugh was hollow. You can't prove anything. The trunk, Daddy, Mia said. She wants out of the trunk. Daniel's composure cracked. Shut up. Just shut up. Sophie emerged from her car, wearing that familiar purple blazer. Daniel, what's going on? I stepped out of the Mercedes, USB drive in hand. Show her, Daniel. Show her what happened to the last one who threatened to expose you. He said you disappeared, Sophie said slowly. Took a settlement. Moved abroad. Jessica Porter never left the country, I said. Did she, Daniel? His face twisted. You've lost your mind. All this conspiracy nonsense. The lady says check the trunk, Mia interrupted. Her trunk, Daddy. The one you locked. Sophie's eyes widened. What trunk? His storage unit, I said. The one he rented 6 years ago, paid in cash. I found the receipt in Mom's letters. Sophie backed away from Daniel. What did you do? Nothing. They're crazy, both of them. But his voice shook. I held up my phone again. The police are on their way. Real police this time, not your bought friends. They're reopening Jessica's case. Daniel lunged for my phone. I sidestepped, but he grabbed my arm, spinning me toward the cliff's edge. Sophie screamed. Then Mia's voice cut through everything. The lady says now, Mummy. Open it now. I pressed send. Daniel's phone buzzed, then Sophie's, then every device within range as the emergency alert went out. Missing person update, Jessica Porter. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Daniel's grip loosened. "You can't prove anything," he whispered, but his eyes darted to Sophie's car. "Check her trunk," I told the approaching officers. "The purple BMW. He borrowed her car that week, didn't you, Daniel?" Sophie fumbled for her keys, hands shaking. No, he wouldn't." The trunk popped open. Later, they'd find traces. DNA. Fibers. Enough to reopen everything. Jessica's disappearance, Mom's death, all of it. But in that moment, as Daniel fell to his knees and Sophie backed away in horror, all I could hear was Mia's soft voice. "The lady says thank you, Mommy. She can rest now." Daniel looked up at me, defeated. How? How did you know?" "You taught me well," I said. "About hiding things in plain sight, about using people's weaknesses against them." I touched Mia's shoulder, about underestimating the ones closest to you. The police moved in with handcuffs as the sun finally set, painting everything in shadows. Sophie sobbed against her car, mascara running in purple-black streaks. "Was any of it real?" I asked Daniel as they led him away. "Any of it at all?" He stopped, looking back at Mia. "She really sees her, doesn't she? In the trunk?" "She sees everything, Daniel. Everything you tried to hide." As the police cars pulled away, Mia took my hand. "The lady's smiling now, Mommy. She's not cold anymore." I squeezed her hand, watching the Mercedes gleam in the twilight. Some trunks, once opened, can never be closed again. But maybe that's how the truth finally gets free. The courtroom emptied slowly after Daniel's sentencing. Life without parole. Justice served in clean, measured words that couldn't begin to capture what he'd done to Jessica Porter, to my mother, to all of us. Sophie had taken a plea deal, trading testimony for immunity. Last I heard, she'd moved across the country, leaving her purple blazers and corporate ambitions behind. I lingered in the wooden pew-like benches, watching Daniel's parents hurry out, unable to meet my eyes. The evidence had been overwhelming. DNA, financial records, witness testimony. But it was Mia's words that had cracked him on the stand. "The lady in the trunk forgives you, Daddy." He'd broken down then, confessing everything. How Jessica had threatened to expose their affair and his financial fraud. How one push had led to another. How my mother had figured it out, confronted him with proof. How the foxglove had seemed like his only option. Rachel touched my shoulder. "Ready?" I nodded, gathering my bag. As we walked out into the autumn sunshine, she hesitated. "There's something you should know," she said. "About Mia's abilities." "I know," I replied. "About Mom." Rachel's eyes widened. "How?" "Found her diary last week. She had them too. The visions, the warnings. That's how she knew about Jessica, about Daniel." I smiled faintly. "Guess it runs in the family." "Elizabeth." Rachel gripped my arm. "The police found something else in Sophie's trunk. Recent." My blood ran cold. "What?" "A purple scarf, and digitalis, the same kind that killed Mom." The pieces clicked into place. Sophie wasn't just covering for Daniel. She was learning from him. At home, Mia sat at her little desk drawing. Pictures of women in purple, of trunks and gardens, of secrets finally seeing daylight. "The ladies are quiet now," she said without looking up, "but they say there are others. Other trunks. Other secrets." I picked up one of her drawings. A detailed sketch of a car trunk, a purple scarf, a garden full of foxglove. Evidence that had been there all along, if only we'd known how to see it. My phone buzzed. A text from Detective Collins. "Found 3 more cases, similar pattern, different cities. Want to consult?" I looked at Mia, still drawing her truths in crayon and colored pencil. "What do you think, sweetheart? Should we help other ladies in trunks?" She nodded, adding a final touch to her artwork, a key drawn in purple, unlocking something dark. That night, I sat in Mom's garden where it had all started. The foxglove was gone now, replaced with roses, red ones, Mia's choice. The garden shed stood empty, its secrets already told. Rachel joined me, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "You know, most people would move away. Start fresh. Most people don't have what we have. A gift or a curse. I thought about Daniel in his prison cell, about Sophie somewhere out there, about all the other trunks still waiting to be opened. Both, I said finally. Mom knew it. That's why she kept watching, kept digging. Some secrets need to stay buried. Others need someone to let them out, Rachel finished. Inside, Mia's nightlight cast shadows on her bedroom wall, shapes that might have been women dancing, or keys turning, or truth finally breaking free. I touched the scar on my wrist where Daniel had grabbed me that last day on the cliff. It was fading now, like his hold on our lives. But some marks remain, reminding us of what we've survived, what we've learned, what we've become. My phone buzzed again. Another case, another city, another trunk waiting to be opened. I thought of Jessica Porter, finally laid to rest. Of Mom, watching over us through Mia's eyes. Of all the others still waiting for someone to hear their whispers. The lady says we're ready, Mia called from her room, her voice carrying that familiar certainty. I smiled, picking up my old investigator's badge from the garden table. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about becoming exactly what they feared you'd be. The one who sees their secrets, who hears the whispers, who opens the trunks they thought would stay locked forever. Yes, I said, watching the roses sway in the evening breeze. We're ready.
The call came during my lunch break, Ryan's voice cracking with an urgency I'd never heard before. Get out of the house now, Tessa. Don't pack, don't ask questions. Just go to your parents' place and wait for me there. I gripped my phone tighter, my sandwich forgotten on my desk. Ryan, what's going on? Please just trust me on this. I'll explain everything later. The line went dead. My hands trembled as I gathered my purse. The marketing proposal I'd spent weeks perfecting lay abandoned on my computer screen. 3 months of marriage, and already my world was tilting on its axis. Taking off early? Sarah from accounting peered over her cubicle wall. Family emergency. The words tasted bitter. I'd used the same excuse last week when Margaret, my mother-in-law, had orchestrated another of her impromptu family dinners, the ones where she'd parade Clara around like some sort of trophy daughter-in-law that never was. The drive home was a blur of red lights and horn blasts. My mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Had something happened to Frank? Was Margaret finally making her move to destroy our marriage? Or was it Clara, with her perfectly timed appearances and lingering touches on Ryan's arm? I pulled into our driveway, half expecting to find the house in flames. Instead, everything looked exactly as I'd left it this morning. The newspaper still on the porch, my gardening gloves draped over the railing. The normalcy felt wrong, somehow more threatening than any visible danger. My phone buzzed. A text from Clara. Heard about Ryan's call. Just checking if you're okay? We're all worried. We. That single word sent ice through my veins. How did she know about the call? And who exactly was we? I deleted the message without responding and dialed Ryan again. Straight to voicemail. Inside the house, everything seemed undisturbed, but the air felt heavy with secrets. I grabbed my laptop and a few essential documents from our home office. Whatever was happening, I wasn't walking into it blind. Another text buzzed through, Margaret this time. Dear, perhaps we should talk before you do anything rash. Family matters are best handled within the family. I laughed, a harsh sound in the empty house. Family. Right. Because she treated me like family from day one, hadn't she? With her subtle digs about my career, her constant reminiscing about Ryan and Clara's childhood together, her pointed comments about traditional values. The front door creaked. I froze, clutching my laptop to my chest. Tessa. Clara's voice floated through the hallway. Your car's outside. I know you're home. I slipped into the kitchen, my heart hammering. Through the window, I could see Paul's car idling in the street, Clara's brother waiting behind the wheel. We're just trying to help, Clara called out, her footsteps moving closer. Margaret's worried sick about Ryan. He's not been himself lately, has he? Ever since the wedding. I eased open the back door, thankful I'd had it oiled last week. Clara's voice continued, honey sweet and reasonable, as I crept along the side of the house. My phone vibrated again. Ryan? Don't let them find you. Almost there. 10 minutes. I ran. Past the garden where Margaret had criticized my choice of flowers. Past the fence Ryan and I had painted together on our first weekend as homeowners. Past all the dreams I'd had of belonging to this family. As I pulled out of the neighborhood, I caught a glimpse of Clara in my rearview mirror, standing in our driveway with her phone pressed to her ear. She wasn't smiling anymore. I drove to my parents' house with my hands clenched on the steering wheel, my wedding ring catching the afternoon sun. Whatever game they were playing, whatever trap they'd set, they'd chosen the wrong woman to underestimate. I sat at my parents' kitchen table, staring at the family photos lining their walls. Happy faces, genuine smiles. Nothing like the brittle pleasantries at the Morgan family dinners. The memory of last week's disaster surfaced, sharp as broken glass. More wine, Tessa dear? Margaret had held the bottle over my glass, not waiting for an answer. Clara, you remember how Ryan used to hate red wine until you introduced him to that lovely Bordeaux on your trip to France? Clara's laugh had tinkled like wind chimes. Oh, that was ages ago. Before university, wasn't it, Ryan? I'd watched my husband's face tighten. I don't remember that trip. Of course you do, Margaret had insisted. It was right after that summer you two dated. The silence that followed had been deafening. Ryan had never mentioned dating Clara. Not once in our 2 years together. Now, sitting in my childhood home, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old social media posts. There they were, Ryan and Clara, tagged in countless photos over the years. Family vacations, holiday celebrations, casual dinners. In every image, Clara stood just a little too close, her hand always finding its way to Ryan's arm or shoulder. The doorbell rang, startling me from my investigation. Through the peephole, I saw Frank Morgan shifting nervously on the porch. Tessa. His voice was barely above a whisper. Can we talk? I opened the door but blocked the entrance. Does Margaret know you're here? He shook his head, looking older than his 62 years. She thinks I'm at the hardware store. May I come in? In the kitchen, Frank's hands trembled as he accepted a cup of coffee. I should have said something sooner. About Clara, about all of it. Why now? Because I heard them planning. He stared into his cup. Margaret and Clara, they were in the garden yesterday, talking about your honeymoon next month. My stomach clenched. What about it? Clara's brother Paul. He's been following you, taking pictures. They're going to send them to Ryan, edited to make it look like. He trailed off, unable to finish. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. That's why Ryan called me today? Because of their photos. Frank nodded. He found them on his computer this morning. Clara must have uploaded them when she was over for dinner. She's not well, Tessa. Her obsession with Ryan, it's gotten worse since the wedding. And Margaret encourages it. Margaret sees what she wants to see. She's always viewed Clara as the daughter she never had. He met my eyes. The daughter she could control. My phone buzzed, another text from Clara. Just talk to Ryan. He's worried about your mental state. We all are. Let's meet and sort this out. I showed Frank the message. His face crumpled. They'll try to isolate you, make you look unstable. It's what they did to Ryan's last girlfriend before you. Margaret convinced everyone the poor girl was mentally ill, spreading rumors about the family. What happened to her? She moved away. Changed her name, I think. Frank stood, his coffee untouched. I should go. But Tessa, be careful. Margaret's been playing these games for 40 years. She's very good at them. After he left, I sat alone in the growing darkness, pieces clicking into place. The constant surveillance, the orchestrated run-ins with Clara, the subtle undermining of my confidence. They'd been laying groundwork for months. My phone lit up with Ryan's message. On my way. Don't trust anything they say. I have proof. I walked to my old bedroom, where a photo album from my wedding day sat on the bookshelf. Flipping through it, I found what I was looking for. A candid shot of Clara watching Ryan during our first dance. Her expression wasn't one of friendly affection or even jealousy. It was hunger. The front door opened downstairs. Footsteps on the stairs, too heavy to be my parents. Tessa. Ryan's voice. Are you up here? I closed the album, my decision made. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they'd forgotten something crucial. In marketing, my entire career was built on understanding human nature and manipulating perceptions. Time to show them how it's really done. Ryan spread the doctored photos across my parents' dining room table. Each one told a carefully crafted lie. Me embracing Paul in shadowy doorways, slipping into hotel lobbies, sharing intimate conversations in cafes. The timestamps matched days I'd been working late at the office. Clara's brother has been following you for weeks, Ryan said, his voice tight. They planted these on my work computer this morning, along with emails they'd fabricated between you and Paul. I picked up one photo, studying how they'd manipulated the lighting to make an innocent business lunch look like a clandestine meeting. Your mother's fingerprints are all over this. She slipped up. Ryan pulled out his phone, playing a voice recording. Margaret's voice filled the room. Once Ryan sees these, he'll have to admit Tessa isn't who he thinks she is. Clara will be there to help him through it, just like before. My fingers clenched around the photo. Before. Ryan's face darkened. Remember what Dad said about my last girlfriend? There's more. Clara created a similar setup with doctored photos back then. But this time, he hesitated. This time she made a mistake. Left metadata on the original photos showing when they were actually taken. A text lit up my phone, Clara again. Ryan's not thinking clearly. Let me help fix this. I care about both of you. She's getting desperate, I said, showing Ryan the message. There's something else. He pulled out a USB drive. Dad found this in Mom's study. It's everything, years of manipulation. Photos she edited, emails she faked, even a journal where she planned how to break up my relationships. She's been grooming Clara as my backup plan since high school. The front door opened downstairs. My parents' voices drifted up, followed by another, Frank's. They're here, Frank called up. Margaret and Clara. They followed me. Ryan moved to the window. Paul's car is blocking the driveway. I gathered the photos, my marketing brain already spinning possibilities. Let them come up. I want to hear how they explain these timestamps. Tessa. Ryan touched my arm. They're dangerous when cornered. So am I. Footsteps on the stairs. Clara appeared first, all concerned smiles and gentle hands. Oh, thank goodness you're both here. We've been so worried. Margaret followed, her face a mask of maternal concern. Ryan, darling, step away from her. You don't know what she's capable of. I held up one of the doctored photos. Interesting choice of editing software, Clara. Adobe's timestamp feature is quite revealing. Color drained from Clara's face. Margaret stepped forward, reaching for the photo. You're confused, dear. Those pictures show Paul following me for weeks? I pulled out my phone, clicking play on a recording app. Or show how you and Clara plan to plant them on Ryan's computer. Because I have to say, discussing criminal conspiracy in your garden wasn't very smart. You recorded us? Clara's voice shook. No. Frank stepped into the doorway. I did. Margaret whirled on her husband. You wouldn't dare. I already have. Frank's voice was steady. I sent copies to everyone, family, friends, Clara's fiancé. Even that private investigator you hired last year to follow Tessa. Turns out he has quite a conscience when he learns he's been manipulated into participating in stalking. Clara lunged for the photos, but Ryan blocked her path. It's over, Clara. All of it. You don't understand, Clara whispered. We were meant to be together. Your mother promised. My mother promised a lot of things, Ryan cut in. To a lot of people. But she doesn't control me anymore. And neither do you. I watched Clara's facade crack, years of obsession and manipulation showing through. She turned to Margaret, desperate. Tell him. Tell him about the plan, about how we were going to fix everything. But Margaret was staring at Frank, 30 years of control slipping through her fingers. You weak, pathetic man. After everything I've done for this family. That's exactly why I did it, Frank said quietly. For our family. Our real family. I stepped forward, my voice steady. You have two choices. Leave now and never contact us again, or we take everything, the photos, the recordings, the evidence of stalking, to the police. Clara's face contorted. You wouldn't. I met her gaze, letting her see the truth. Try me. The silence stretched, heavy with decades of manipulation and lies. Then Margaret turned, her shoulders stiff with fury, and walked out. Clara remained, staring at Ryan with naked longing. "Clara," I said softly, "don't make me prove how far I'll go to protect what's mine." She fled, her sobs echoing down the stairs. But I felt no victory, only a cold certainty that this was just the beginning. The email arrived at midnight. A single photo attachment from an anonymous account. My hand shook as I opened it. Margaret and Clara outside a psychiatric facility, dated 3 years ago. The caption read, "Ask Ryan about Jessica." I stared at my sleeping husband on my parents' guest bed. His face troubled even in rest. Jessica. The name scratched at something in my memory. A whispered conversation at our wedding reception, quickly silenced when I'd approached. My phone buzzed. "Frank. Need to meet. Alone. The diner on 5th. Now." Ryan stirred. "Everything okay?" "Just work." I lied, the words bitter on my tongue. "Go back to sleep." The diner was empty except for Frank, hunched over a coffee cup. When I slid into the booth, he pushed a manila envelope across the table. "Jessica Martinez," he said. Ryan's fiancée before Clara orchestrated her breakdown. Inside the envelope, newspaper clippings told the story. Jessica Martinez, promising young attorney, committed after a public breakdown. Released 6 months later, she disappeared completely. Clara didn't just want to break them up, Frank continued. She wanted to destroy Jessica. And Margaret helped. How? The same way they're trying with you. Small things at first, moving items in Jessica's house, sending emails from fake accounts, arranging coincidental meetings that made her look unstable. He paused. Ryan never knew the full truth. He thought Jessica's breakdown was real. My coffee grew cold as Frank detailed their methodology. The gaslighting, the carefully planted evidence, the slow isolation from friends and family. Why tell me this now? Because they're escalating faster with you. They learned from their mistakes with Jessica. Frank's hands trembled. Margaret's already contacted your firm's HR department. Anonymous concerns about your mental health. The diner's fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright. Ryan would never believe. Ryan believed it about Jessica. Frank's eyes were haunted. He trusted his mother's concern then. And Clara. She's perfected her role as the supportive friend. My phone lit up with a text from Clara. Ryan's worried about you sneaking out at night. Let me help before things get worse. They're watching the house, I realized. Frank nodded. Paul's car. 2 blocks down. I scrolled through my photos, finding the one from my wedding. Clara watching Ryan during our first dance. The hunger in her eyes matched the woman who'd stood outside that psychiatric facility. There's something else, Frank said. Jessica didn't just disappear. The diner's door chimed. Clara walked in, her concerned smile perfectly practiced. Oh, thank goodness, she gushed. Ryan's been frantic. He woke up and you were gone. She reached for my arm. I jerked away. Don't touch me. Sweetie, you're not well. We can all see it. Her voice dripped sympathy. The paranoia, the late-night wanderings, the accusations. Just like poor Jessica. Clara. Frank's voice held a warning. She ignored him. Ryan's waiting outside. Let's get you home, get you help. Before you hurt yourself. Through the diner's windows, I saw Ryan's car pulling up. Margaret in the passenger seat. The trap was closing. I stood, my chair scraping loudly. You know what happened to Jessica, don't you? Clara's mask slipped for just a moment. Jessica was sick. She needed help. No. The revelation hit like lightning. She figured it out. That's why she disappeared. She wasn't running from a breakdown. She was running from you. Tessa. Ryan's voice from the doorway. Mom told me about the HR complaints. About your behavior. I met his eyes, seeing the doubt there. The same doubt that had probably clouded his judgment with Jessica. But I wasn't Jessica. Tell him, Clara, I said softly. Tell him about the facility. About the photos. Clara's composure cracked. Ryan, she's confused. The timestamps don't lie. I pulled out my phone, showing the anonymous email. Neither do psychiatric facility visitor logs. Should we call them? See who visited Jessica before her breakdown? The diner fell silent. In that moment, I saw my choices clearly. Run like Jessica or stand and fight. And I'd never been good at running. Ryan, I said, not breaking eye contact with Clara. I think it's time you heard the whole story about your ex-fiancé. The package arrived 3 days after the diner confrontation. No return address, just my name in careful handwriting. Inside, a USB drive and a note. You're not the first. You won't be the last. J. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. Video files, dozens of them, showing Clara and Margaret's methodical destruction of Jessica Martinez. Security footage, phone recordings, emails, a digital breadcrumb trail of calculated madness. I found Jessica. Ryan's voice made me jump. He stood in the doorway of our temporary bedroom at my parents' house, his face ashen. She's in Seattle, working under her mother's maiden name. Did you talk to her? She agreed to video call. Tonight. He sat heavily on the bed. She said Clara visited her in the facility, told her if she ever came back, there'd be worse consequences than a psychiatric hold. My phone buzzed. Clara's fiancé, James. Can we meet? Something's not right with Clara. I showed Ryan the message. It's probably a trap. Or an opportunity. Ryan's jaw tightened. James needs to know what he's getting into. The cafe was crowded enough to feel safe. James sat alone, turning his coffee cup nervously. When he saw us, his face crumpled. Clara's pregnant, he blurted out. At least, that's what she told Margaret. But when I called her doctor, let me guess, I said. No record of pregnancy. He nodded. And I found these. He slid his phone across the table. Photos of Clara outside our house watching through windows. Dozens of them spanning months. She doesn't know I saw them. My phone lit up, Frank. Margaret's gone. Cleared out her accounts this morning. They're making their move, Ryan muttered. James leaned forward. There's more. Clara's been meeting someone at the psychiatric facility where Jessica stayed. A doctor. They're building a case. The cafe door chimed. Clara walked in, her face a perfect mask of concern. Behind her, Paul blocked the exit. James, darling. Her voice dripped honey. I've been so worried. When Mother Morgan said you were meeting them. She placed a protective hand over her non-existent pregnancy. Stop lying, Clara. James stood. I know about the photos. About Jessica. Clara's mask slipped, just for a moment. They've poisoned you against me. Just like they're trying to poison everyone. She turned to the other customers. My fiancé's sister is mentally ill. We're just trying to get her help. People started staring. Phones came out. Recording this? I stood slowly. Good. Because Clara Bennett and Margaret Morgan are about to be famous for all the wrong reasons. You don't want to do this, Paul warned, moving closer. Actually, I do. I opened my laptop, turning it to face the growing crowd. Jessica Martinez sent me something interesting. Want to see how they drove her to a breakdown? Or should we start with the fake pregnancy records Clara's been creating? Clara lunged for the laptop. You stupid bitch. There it is. Ryan's voice cut through the chaos. He held up his phone, recording. The real Clara Bennett. She froze, realizing her mistake. The cafe had gone silent. Dozens of phones capturing her transformation from concerned friend to snarling aggressor. Where's my mother? Ryan asked quietly. Clara's laugh was brittle. Somewhere you'll never find her. She's making sure everything's ready. For when Tessa has her inevitable breakdown. You mean like this? I pressed play on Jessica's video. Clara's voice filled the cafe. Just sign the commitment papers, Jessica. Admit you're unstable, and this all goes away. James backed away from Clara, horror dawning on his face. What have you done? What I had to do. Clara's composure cracked completely. He was supposed to be mine. Margaret promised. After Jessica, after every other girl she helped me eliminate. She turned to Ryan, desperate. We were meant to be together. Your mother understood that. No, Ryan said softly. My mother used you. Just like she used everyone else. My phone buzzed one final time, an email from Jessica. Sending this to every news outlet now. Good luck. Clara saw the headline appear on my screen. Systematic gaslighting ring exposed. Prominent family's mental health manipulation scheme. In that moment, watching Clara's world implode, I felt no satisfaction. Only a bone-deep weariness and a single burning question. Where was Margaret and what final trap had she set? The answer came sooner than expected, as police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The police didn't come for Clara. They came for me. Tessa Morgan, the officer read from his tablet. You're wanted for questioning regarding allegations of stalking, harassment, and cyber threats against Clara Bennett and Margaret Morgan. The cafe had gone silent. Phones still recorded, but now they were pointed at me. Clara's mask of victimhood slipped perfectly back into place, tears streaming down her face. See, she whispered. This is exactly what we were afraid of. Ryan stepped forward. This is ridiculous. We have proof. Of elaborate forgeries, Paul interrupted, holding up a folder. Created by your wife to harass my sister. The metadata proves it. My laptop. The USB drive. Everything Jessica sent. They'd somehow corrupted it all, twisted it back against me. I watched the officer scroll through what looked like my emails, my photos, all doctored to show an obsession with destroying Clara's life. Check the timestamps. I started, but Clara cut in. Just like with Jessica, she sobbed. She's trying to recreate what happened, but making me the villain this time. The doctors warned us this might happen. My phone buzzed one last time before the officer confiscated it. Frank? Margaret's at your office. She's speaking to HR now. The pieces clicked together. While we'd been focused on Clara's breakdown, Margaret had been methodically destroying my credibility, my career, my life. Ryan. I turned to my husband, seeing doubt flicker across his face. Don't let them do this. He reached for me, but the officer stepped between us. Sir, given the nature of the allegations, you should maintain distance until. He's my husband. And my son. Margaret's voice cut through the chaos. She stood in the cafe doorway, elegant and composed. Who we're trying to protect from your escalating behavior. The room spun. Everything we'd gathered, every piece of evidence, they'd planned for it all, turned it against us, made me look exactly like Jessica. Obsessed, unstable, dangerous. The psychiatric hold is temporary, the officer said quietly. Just until. No. Ryan's voice cracked. Mom, stop this. Margaret touched his arm. Sweetheart, we tried to handle this privately. But after what happened at the office today. What happened at the office? My voice sounded distant, strange. Security footage of you threatening Clara this morning, Paul supplied smoothly. Very convincing performance. But I hadn't been near the office. I'd been. The realization hit like ice water. They'd planned this months ago. Built their case while we thought we were building ours. Show them, I whispered to Ryan. Jessica's video call tonight. Already handled, Margaret said softly. The real Jessica Martinez called earlier, very disturbed by your attempts to impersonate her. She's willing to testify about your obsession with her story. Clara stepped closer, her voice gentle. Let them help you, Tessa. Like they helped me understand my feelings about Ryan weren't healthy. The ultimate twist, making Clara the reformed obsessive and me the new threat. I looked at James, still clutching his phone. The photos weren't taken by Clara, Paul finished. The metadata shows they came from your phone. Stalking her, building your case. Very thorough. The officer took my arm. Through the cafe window, I saw the news vans arriving. Margaret had orchestrated every detail, down to the public breakdown they'd predicted I'd have. Ryan, I tried one last time, but Clara was already beside him, playing the supportive friend. We'll take care of him, Margaret promised, while you get the help you need. As they led me out, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the cafe window. Wild-eyed, disheveled, exactly how they wanted me to look. How they planned for me to look. The news cameras rolled as I was guided into the police car. Through the window, I watched Clara comfort Ryan. Margaret standing protectively nearby. The perfect family tableau, with me cast as the unstable outsider who tried to destroy their happiness. Don't worry, the officer said kindly. The facility has an excellent reputation. The same facility where Jessica had been held. Where Clara had threatened her. Where they'd perfected their technique. The car door closed, sealing me in silence. In the rearview mirror, I saw Margaret smile. The facility's visitor room smelled of artificial lavender and despair. 3 days of observation had taught me their routines, their blind spots. Now I waited, watching Margaret and Clara arrange themselves across the table, their faces masks of rehearsed concern. "The doctors say you're not cooperating," Margaret began. I smiled, the same empty smile Clara had perfected. "How's Ryan?" "Worried sick," Clara answered quickly. "He wanted to come, but you couldn't risk him seeing the real Jessica Martinez, could you?" Their mask slipped just slightly. Margaret recovered first. "The delusions are getting worse. Dr. Andrews warned us." "Dr. Andrews?" I placed a USB drive on the table. "The same one who helped you forge Jessica's commitment papers? He's been very cooperative since the FBI started investigating medical fraud." Clara's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. "You're lying." "Am I?" I turned to the observation window. "Frank." The door opened. Frank walked in, followed by Ryan and a woman I recognized from Jessica's photos. The real Jessica Martinez. "Hello, Clara," Jessica said softly. "It's been 3 years." Margaret stood so quickly her chair toppled. "This is inappropriate. My daughter-in-law is having an episode." "Your daughter-in-law," Ryan cut in, "has been working with federal investigators for the past 72 hours. Every conversation in this facility is recorded, including your little chat with Dr. Andrews yesterday." Clara lunged for the door, but Frank blocked her path. "Paul confessed everything," he said. "About the faked photos, the forged emails. He took a plea deal this morning." "You don't understand," Clara whispered, turning to Ryan. "Everything I did was for us. Margaret promised." "Margaret promised a lot of things," Jessica interrupted. "To a lot of women. How many were there before me, Margaret? How many lives did you and Clara destroy to keep Ryan under your control?" I stood, finally letting my mask fall. "The thing about marketing, we understand patterns, narratives. Once Jessica reached out, it wasn't hard to find the others. 6 women, 6 mental breakdowns, 6 lives destroyed. You planned this," Margaret hissed. "Used your own commitment to trap us." I learned from the best. I moved closer, watching her facade crack. "But unlike you, I had something you never expected. Actual proof. Actual witnesses. And a husband who chose me." Clara screamed, a raw sound of desperation, and threw herself at Ryan. "She's lying. Just like the others. I'm the only one who truly loves you." The orderlies rushed in, but it was Jessica who spoke, her voice cutting through Clara's hysteria. "That's exactly what you said before you visited me here. Before you told me what would happen if I ever came back." Ryan stepped away from Clara's grasping hands. "It's over, Clara. The FBI has everything. The fake documents, the surveillance footage, Dr. Andrews' confession, even Mom's offshore accounts where she paid everyone off." Margaret's composure finally shattered. "You ungrateful." She lunged at me, but the orderlies were faster. I watched them restrain both women, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. "You know what your biggest mistake was?" I asked softly, assuming I'd play by your rules. "That I'd break like the others." "You'll regret this," Margaret spat as they led her away. "You have no idea what I'm still capable of." "Actually," Frank interrupted, "we do. That's why I gave the FBI access to all your private accounts this morning, including the ones in the Caymans." Clara's sobs echoed down the hallway. Ryan took my hand as Jessica spoke with the federal agents. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for doubting even for a moment." I squeezed his hand, watching Margaret and Clara being led away in handcuffs instead of me. "You came through when it mattered." Frank touched my shoulder. "The others are here. The women Margaret and Clara targeted. They're ready to testify." I nodded, feeling the weight of the past weeks finally lifting. We'd won, but the victory felt hollow somehow. Looking at Clara's broken form and Margaret's hatred, I realized revenge wasn't what I'd really wanted. Justice was. And as I walked out of the facility a free woman, I knew we'd found something better than revenge. We'd found truth. And sometimes that's the greatest victory of all. The courtroom emptied slowly after Margaret's sentencing. 20 years for conspiracy, fraud, and false imprisonment. Clara had taken a plea deal, trading testimony for a lighter sentence. Paul would serve 5 years for his role. Justice served cold and clean. I lingered in my seat, staring at the judge's empty bench, until Ryan touched my shoulder. Ready? Almost. I pulled out an old photograph I'd found while packing up his childhood home. Margaret, much younger, stood beside another woman who shared her calculating smile. The back read, "Margaret and Helen, sisters in arms." "Dad confirmed it this morning," I said. "Your Aunt Helen did the same thing to him that Margaret tried to do to you. Isolated him, controlled his relationships. It wasn't just about keeping you. It was about recreating her sister's perfect family fantasy." Ryan studied the photo. Helen died in a psychiatric facility. Dad always said she had problems, but now we know what really happened. I handed him another photo. Helen with a young Margaret, teaching her the art of manipulation. The pattern started long before us. Frank waited by the courthouse steps with Jessica and the other survivors. 6 women whose lives Margaret and Clara had nearly destroyed. Now they stood tall, unbroken. "The support group meets next week," Jessica said. "We're calling it Phoenix Rising." She smiled. "From the ashes, you know?" I watched them share knowing looks, these women who'd faced the same darkness I had. Their strength wasn't in revenge or even justice. It was in refusing to let the experience define them. "The house is almost packed up," Frank said. "Found this in Margaret's study." He handed me a leather-bound journal. "Might help explain some things. Or not. Sometimes understanding the monster doesn't make it less monstrous." Inside, Margaret's elegant handwriting detailed decades of manipulation. Not just of Ryan but of everyone around her. The last entry, dated the day before her arrest, read, "Tessa sees the game now. But she doesn't understand. It's not about winning. It's about playing forever." She thought she was teaching me. I realized. Every move, every countermove, she was grooming me to become her, just like Helen groomed her. Ryan took the journal, his face troubled. "We could burn it. End the pattern here." "No." I closed the journal firmly. "It belongs in evidence. For the next time someone like Margaret tries to play these games." We walked to our car, leaving the courthouse and its justice behind. Frank headed to his new apartment, free from Margaret's shadow. Jessica and the others dispersed, carrying their victory like shields against future darkness. At home, our real home, not the battlefield it had become, I found one last photo that Margaret had hidden. Ryan as a child, smiling genuinely, before his mother's manipulation had dimmed his light, before Clara had been positioned as his savior, before the games began. "We're having dinner with your parents tonight," Ryan said, watching me study the photo. "Mom wants to hear about the support group. My mother's cooking. My father's bad jokes. Simple things that Margaret had tried to twist into weapons. But she'd failed, because she'd never understood what real family meant." The doorbell rang, a delivery. Inside the package, a letter from Clara, forwarded by her lawyer. I started to tear it up, then stopped. Understanding the past didn't mean letting it control our future. I placed the unopened letter in a box with Margaret's journal and the old photos. Evidence of a pattern we'd broken. A legacy we'd refused to inherit. "Ready for dinner?" Ryan asked. I looked around our home at the life we were reclaiming. The shadows were still there, but they no longer held power. Margaret had wanted to teach me her game, but she'd taught me something else instead. How to end it. "Ready," I said, leaving the box of shadows behind. Sometimes victory isn't in winning the game. It's in refusing to play. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, on your own terms in the light.
I stare at the pink slip in my hands, the words, "Termination effective immediately," swimming before my eyes like cruel little fish. 10 years of dedication to the Riverside Public Library, reduced to a single sheet of paper and a box of personal belongings. "I'm sorry, Sarah," Director Thompson says, not meeting my eyes. His hands fidget with a gold pen, the same one I'd given him last Christmas. "It's out of my hands. The board's decision is final." The lie in his voice is as clear as the afternoon sun streaming through his office window. I've known this man for a decade, watched him stammer through budget meetings and celebration speeches. He's never been good at deception. "Who made the call?" I ask, my voice steadier than I expect. "Really made it?" He clicks the pen repeatedly, a nervous tick I've seen 1,000 times. I can't discuss that. Legal reasons, you understand. I don't understand, not at all. But I gather what's left of my dignity and stand up, the chair scraping against the floor with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. Of course, legal reasons. The words taste like vinegar on my tongue. My box sits on my desk, hastily packed by someone else's hands. My carefully curated reading recommendations for the children's section are already gone, replaced by generic bestseller lists. They didn't waste any time erasing me. Emily catches me at the front desk, her face flushed with anger. This is bullshit, Sarah. Complete bullshit. They can't just... They can. I cut her off, shifting the box in my arms. They did. But your programs, the literacy initiative, someone else will handle it. The words come out sharper than intended, making Emily flinch. Sorry, I need to process this. The walk to my car feels like a walk of shame, even though I've done nothing wrong. My mind races through possible reasons. Budget cuts, personal vendetta, the recent divorce making me appear unstable. None of it makes sense. My phone buzzes as I reach the parking lot. Unknown number. Hello? Miss Mitchell? A man's voice, smooth as aged whiskey. I couldn't help but notice your situation at the library. Perhaps we could discuss some opportunities over coffee? I should hang up. Strange men calling at precisely the wrong moment screams, trap. But something in his voice holds me there, like a hook caught in tender flesh. Who is this? Ryan Harper. The name means nothing to me, but the confidence in his tone suggests it should. I have a proposition that might interest you, given your current circumstances. My current circumstances happened 10 minutes ago. He chuckles, the sound rich and warm. News travels fast in certain circles. The daily grind, 30 minutes. I'll be the one with the Wall Street Journal and an espresso. I should say no. Should go home, curl up with a bottle of wine, and lick my wounds. But anger and curiosity make a dangerous cocktail. 45 minutes, I counter. I need to drop some things at home. Perfect. And Miss Mitchell? I'm truly sorry about the library. It's not right what they did to you. The line goes dead before I can respond. I sit in my car, staring at the box of memories in my passenger seat, and feel something shift inside me. The familiar comfort of books and routine crumbles away, revealing something harder underneath, something that wants answers. My phone buzzes again. Emily, probably checking on me. I ignore it. Whatever game this Ryan Harper is playing, whatever circles he moves in that knew about my firing before it happened, I'm going to find out. Because one thing's become crystal clear. This wasn't a simple termination. This was a calculated move in someone else's game, and I'm tired of being a pawn. The daily grind hums with afternoon activity as I spot Ryan Harper exactly where he said he'd be. His tailored suit stands out among the casual crowd like a shark in a goldfish pond. He rises when I approach, and I notice his smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. Miss Mitchell, thank you for coming. He gestures to the chair across from him. A steaming cup already waits for me. My usual order, somehow. How did you know what I drink? Lucky guess. He slides the cup closer. Most librarians I know prefer their coffee like their books, complex and thoughtfully prepared. I leave the cup untouched. Most librarians you know? And how many would that be? His laugh is practiced, precise. Point taken. I did my homework before reaching out. Your reputation at Riverside was impressive. The children's literacy program in particular caught my attention. You still haven't explained why I'm here. Direct. I like that. He leans forward, lowering his voice. What if I told you I could offer you something better than your position at the library? Something that would make today's unpleasantness seem like a blessing in disguise? My phone buzzes again, Emily's third attempt to reach me. I silence it without looking away from Ryan's face. I'd say that timing is everything, and yours is suspiciously perfect. Sometimes opportunity knocks at unexpected moments. He pulls out a business card, sliding it across the table. The paper feels expensive between my fingers. My family's foundation is launching a new educational initiative. We need someone with your expertise to oversee it. The Harper Foundation, I read aloud. The logo looks familiar. I've seen it on donor plaques around town. Why me? Because you understand the importance of stories, of shaping narratives. Something shifts in his expression, almost imperceptible. The position comes with significant resources at your disposal, complete creative control. And what's the catch? Dinner. He says it simply, like he's suggesting a handshake. With my parents this Saturday. They'll want to meet the person who'll be handling such a delicate project. My coffee sits untouched, growing cold. You orchestrated my firing, didn't you? Instead of denying it, he studies me with newfound interest. Would it matter if I did? The outcome remains the same. You need a job, and I'm offering you an opportunity that could change your life. That's not a no. No, it's not. He reaches across the table, his fingers brushing mine as he retrieves his business card. 7 o'clock Saturday. The address is on the back. Wear something elegant. My mother notices these things. I should walk away. Every instinct screams that I'm being manipulated, moved like a piece on a chessboard. But curiosity burns stronger than caution. Why go to all this trouble? You could have just approached me at the library. Some doors need to close before others can open. He stands, adjusting his cuffs with practiced precision. Besides, I find that people are most interesting when they're knocked off balance, shows their true character. As he turns to leave, I call after him. And what if I don't show up? He pauses, that same calculated smile playing at his lips. Then you'll never know why the board was so eager to let you go, will you? The cafe feels colder after he leaves. I finally take a sip of the coffee he ordered. Perfect temperature, exactly how I like it. My phone buzzes again, this time with a text from Emily. Where are you? We need to talk about what happened. I stare at the message, then at the business card still on the table. Ryan's words echo in my head. Some doors need to close before others can open. He's right about one thing. I want answers. But as I pick up the card and run my thumb across the embossed lettering, I can't shake the feeling that I'm about to walk through a door that won't easily close behind me. Saturday's dinner invitation sits like a weight in my pocket, a ticket to either salvation or damnation. Only one way to find out which. I text Emily back. Rain check. Something came up. Then I add the Harper Foundation's address to my calendar, already wondering what elegant means to people who can orchestrate someone's firing with a snap of their fingers. Game on, Ryan Harper. Game on. The Harper Mansion looms before me like something out of a Gothic novel, all sharp angles and dark windows. Victoria Harper's smile is equally sharp as she opens the door, her pearl necklace catching the evening light. Sarah, darling, right on time. Her perfume wraps around me like expensive chains. Ryan speaks so highly of you. The foyer could swallow my entire apartment. Family portraits line the walls, generations of Harpers staring down with identical calculated smiles. Ryan appears at my elbow, his hand settling at the small of my back. Mother, you're hovering. Nonsense. I'm being welcoming. Victoria's eyes flick over my dress, the most expensive thing I own, and clearly not expensive enough. Daniel's in the study. Why don't you show Sarah around while I check on dinner? Ryan guides me through rooms that feel more like museum exhibits than living spaces. In the study, Daniel Harper barely looks up from his laptop. Welcome to the family business, he says, as if my presence is already a foregone conclusion. The word family catches in my throat like a fishhook. During dinner, Victoria orchestrates the conversation like a conductor, each topic carefully selected. Ryan tells us you're quite the expert on community engagement, she says, cutting into her perfectly cooked salmon. Such a shame about the library. Politics can be so messy. Politics? I set down my fork. I was told it was a budget issue. Oh, everything's politics these days. Victoria waves her hand dismissively. The right word in the right ear, and suddenly budgets appear or disappear. Fascinating process, really. Ryan tenses beside me. I feel the trap closing, but can't see its shape yet. Speaking of processes, Daniel interjects, Have you considered our offer, Sarah, the foundation position? I'm still evaluating my options. Victoria's smile tightens. Options, dear, in this economy? Besides, we're offering you something quite special. The Foundation's new literacy initiative could use someone with your particular background. My background as a recently fired librarian? Your background as someone who understands loss, Victoria says softly, and the importance of securing one's future. The room suddenly feels airless. Ryan's hand finds mine under the table, but I can't tell if it's meant to comfort or restrain. Mother, Ryan starts, but Victoria cuts him off. I'm simply being honest, dear. Sarah's clearly intelligent. She must understand what we're offering. And what exactly is that, I ask, though I already know the answer won't be the truth. Security, influence, family. Victoria sets down her wine glass with precise movements. Things I imagine you've been missing since your divorce. Speaking of which, how is Thomas enjoying his new position at Sterling & Myers? The law firm partnership suits him, I hear. The pieces click into place with nauseating clarity. My ex-husband's sudden career jump, the library board's unexpected decision, the Harper Foundation's timely offer. You've been watching me, I say. Planning this. Planning implies calculation, Victoria corrects. We prefer to think of it as creating opportunities. For whom? For all of us. Daniel finally looks up from his plate. The foundation needs fresh blood, new perspectives, and you need a safety net. What I need, I push back from the table, is air. Ryan follows me onto the terrace, closing the French doors behind us. Sarah, wait. It's not what you think. Really? Because I think your family orchestrated my firing, manipulated my ex-husband's career, and is now trying to buy me with some vague promise of security. They're trying to help. Help who, Ryan? Them? You? Because it sure as hell isn't me. He runs a hand through his hair, frustration breaking through his polished veneer. You don't understand how they operate. Everything's a transaction to them, even love. Is that what this is? Love? The question hangs between us like smoke. Inside, I can see Victoria watching through the window, her expression unreadable. Come back inside, Ryan pleads. Let me explain. But I'm already moving toward the driveway, my heels clicking against the stone path like tiny hammers nailing shut a coffin. Behind me, I hear Victoria's voice drift through the open window. Let her go, darling. She'll be back. They always come back when they run out of options. I pause at my car, looking back at the mansion. Ryan stands frozen on the terrace, caught between his mother's shadow and the fading light. For a moment, I almost pity him. Almost. The letter arrives on expensive cream paper, hand-delivered to my apartment. Inside, a single sheet contains life-changing news. My great-aunt Eleanor, whom I'd met exactly twice, has left me her entire estate. The inheritance that would solve all my problems. Except for one detail. Victoria Harper is the executor. I'm still staring at the letter when Emily bursts through my door. You need to see this. She thrusts her tablet at me, displaying a news article about the Harper Foundation's latest acquisition, the Riverside Public Library building. They're converting it into a private research facility, Emily says, watching my face. Guess who's leading the project? Thomas. My ex-husband's name tastes like copper in my mouth. They're all connected, aren't they? There's more. Emily swipes to another article. Ryan's been appointed to the city council. The vote was unanimous. A knock at the door makes us both jump. Ryan stands there looking less polished than usual. We need to talk. Emily moves between us. She's not interested. It's about Eleanor Mitchell's estate. His eyes meet mine. Mother's making her move tomorrow. I let him in, despite Emily's warning glare. He paces my small living room like a caged animal. The foundation position, the library, Thomas. It was all groundwork, he says. They needed control of your assets before... He stops abruptly. Before what? Before the merger. He runs a hand through his disheveled hair. Harper Industries is bleeding money. They need Eleanor's estate to shore up the losses. Mother's planning to declare you mentally unfit to manage the inheritance. Emily curses under her breath. I feel oddly calm, like I'm watching this happen to someone else. She can't do that, Emily protests. Sarah's perfectly competent. She has Thomas's testimony about Sarah's emotional instability during the divorce, the library board's statement about her erratic behavior. It's all fabricated, but it's enough, I finish. That's why she wanted me at the foundation, to document my decisions, build a case. Ryan nods, not meeting my eyes. I tried to stop it, but you're a coward. The words come out flat, factual. Sarah, why tell me now? He finally looks at me. Because I found out what happened to Eleanor Mitchell. She didn't die of natural causes. The room goes silent. Emily's hand finds mine, squeezing hard. Mother arranged for her medication to be adjusted. She'd been planning this for months, waiting for the right moment. When you lost your job, became vulnerable. He trails off. Get out. My voice doesn't shake, neither do my hands. Sarah, please, I'm trying to help. Like you helped Eleanor? The calm starts cracking. Get out. He leaves a file on my coffee table before going. Everything you need to know is in here. But be careful. Mother's having you watched. After he's gone, Emily starts making calls to lawyer friends. I open the file with trembling fingers. Inside, I find documentation of Victoria's schemes, emails, financial records, medical reports, a paper trail of destruction. My phone buzzes with a text from Victoria. Dinner tomorrow? We should discuss Eleanor's estate. Your future depends on it. Emily looks up from her phone. Marcus Flynn called back. He's willing to meet tonight. Who's Marcus Flynn? Former Harper Industries executive, left under mysterious circumstances last year, says he has information we need. I stare at Victoria's text, thinking about Eleanor, about the library, about all the lives the Harpers have casually destroyed. Tell him I'll be there. Sarah, Emily hesitates. Are you sure about this? These people are dangerous. I pick up Eleanor's letter, running my fingers over the expensive paper. They think I'm just another pawn, someone to manipulate and discard. I meet Emily's worried gaze. But they forgot something important. What's that? In chess, a pawn that reaches the other side of the board becomes a queen. I type a response to Victoria. Looking forward to it. The pieces are set. Tomorrow, Victoria expects to meet a broken woman ready to surrender her inheritance. Instead, she'll meet someone else entirely, someone who knows how to play the game. Marcus Flynn's office sits above a closed pawn shop, the kind of place the Harpers wouldn't deign to notice. Perfect for plotting their downfall. Victoria's pattern is consistent, Marcus says, spreading photographs across his desk. She finds vulnerable people with valuable assets, integrates them into the family's orbit, then destroys them systematically. The photos show familiar faces, all people who'd crossed paths with the Harpers, all broken in different ways. My phone buzzes with a text from Lily. Why is Victoria Harper asking me about your mental health? My hands clench. They're targeting my sister. Of course they are. Marcus's voice carries the weight of experience. Victoria likes to create pressure points. Your sister, your job, your reputation. She'll use everything. You sound like you know her well. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. I was chief financial officer at Harper Industries for 15 years, until I discovered irregularities in their charitable foundation's accounts. Next thing I knew, my wife was leaving me over fabricated evidence of an affair, and my teenage daughter wouldn't speak to me. Emily shifts in her chair. Why help Sarah? Why now? Because Victoria made a mistake with Eleanor Mitchell's estate. She got sloppy, left traces. He pulls out another file, including this. The document shows a series of transfers from Harper Industries to offshore accounts, each coinciding with a death or disappearance. Eleanor's name is the last on the list. My phone buzzes again. Ryan. Mother's meeting with the probate judge tomorrow. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. They're moving faster than we thought, I say. Marcus nods. Victoria's desperate. Harper Industries is hemorrhaging money. Without Eleanor's estate, they'll lose everything, Emily finishes. Not just money. Marcus's expression darkens. Power. Control. Victoria's entire identity is built on being untouchable. Take that away. My phone rings. Lily again. This time I answer. Sarah? Her voice trembles. Victoria's here at my apartment. She says she's worried about you, that you're having some kind of breakdown. She brought papers for me to sign. Don't sign anything. My voice sounds strange in my ears. I'm coming over. There's someone else here too. Thomas? Your ex? They're saying... The line goes dead. Emily's already grabbing her keys, but Marcus stops us. Wait! This is exactly what Victoria wants. To force you into making a mistake. That's my sister. And if you rush in without a plan, you'll lose everything, including any chance of helping Lily. He's right, but every second feels like betrayal. I force myself to think like Victoria, calculate moves and counter moves. The probate hearing, I say slowly. What if we let Victoria win? Emily stares at me. Have you lost your mind? No. Marcus leans forward. She's thinking like a chess player. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a piece to win the game. My phone buzzes one final time. Victoria. Lovely chat with Lily. She's so concerned about you, dear. Shall we discuss terms? I show them the message. Victoria thinks she has all the pieces in place, so let's let her think she's won. While we set up the real endgame, Marcus agrees. But Sarah, you need to understand, once we start this, there's no going back. Victoria won't just try to destroy you. She'll annihilate everything you care about. I think about Eleanor, about Lily, about all the lives Victoria has casually ruined, about the look in Ryan's eyes when he finally chose to warn me. Too little, too late. Good, I say, and my voice sounds like someone else's, someone harder. Because I'm going to do the same to her. Emily touches my arm. Sarah, this isn't about revenge anymore. I pick up one of Marcus's photographs, a family much like mine, now broken beyond repair. This is about justice, about making sure Victoria Harper never hurts another family again. Marcus gathers the files with practiced efficiency. Then let's begin. But remember, from this moment on, trust no one. Not Ryan, not the police, not even me. Why not you? His smile turns bitter. Because everyone has something to lose, and Victoria's very good at finding out what that is. I send Victoria a response. Terms, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Then I turn off my phone and start learning how to destroy the woman who thought she could own me. Tomorrow, Victoria Harper will think she's won everything, and that's exactly when she'll start losing it all. The probate hearing feels like a carefully orchestrated play, with Victoria Harper as both director and star. She sits across from me in the judge's chambers, perfectly composed in Chanel, while I deliberately let my hands shake as I hold the papers. Miss Mitchell appears unable to manage her affairs, Victoria says softly, concern dripping from every syllable. The recent erratic behavior, the job loss, the emotional instability. My lawyer, carefully chosen by Marcus for this performance, makes a weak protest. Judge Harrison barely glances up from the documentation. And you're willing to assume responsibility for the estate's management, Mrs. Harper? It's the least we can do for poor Eleanor's niece. I sign the papers with trembling fingers, playing my part. Victoria's smile widens fractionally, a predator's satisfaction at a clean kill. But as we leave the chambers, Emily rushes in, her face ashen. Sarah, it's Lily. She's in the hospital. The performance drops away like shattered glass. What? Apparent overdose, Emily says, watching Victoria from the corner of her eye. They found prescription medications. Victoria touches my arm, her grip steel beneath silk. My dear, this only proves we made the right decision. You need to focus on your sister now, not worry about managing an estate. I pull away, already running. Behind me, I hear Victoria's measured steps following at a careful distance, close enough to show concern, far enough to deny involvement. At the hospital, Thomas stands outside Lily's room, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. My ex-husband, now Victoria's puppet, blocking my path. You can't go in, he says. They're reviewing her psychiatric hold. Psychiatric hold? Given her state when they found her and the notes. What notes? He pulls out his phone, shows me texts supposedly from Lily about my unstable behavior, my paranoid accusations against the Harpers, my declining mental state, all perfectly crafted to support Victoria's narrative. You helped them do this, I realize. To my sister. Sarah, you need help. We're all worried. Ryan appears from around the corner, his face tight. Father's calling an emergency board meeting. They're announcing the merger tomorrow. Merger? The pieces click together with sickening clarity. You're selling Harper Industries. Restructuring, Ryan corrects, not meeting my eyes. Once Mother has control of Eleanor's estate, the company's debt disappears, I finish. And Lily? Was putting my sister in the hospital part of the restructuring plan? Victoria appears behind me, her voice carrying just far enough for nearby nurses to hear. Dear, you're getting agitated again. Perhaps you should let the doctors examine you while you're here? I feel the trap closing. The concerned family members, the documented instability, the convenient timing. One wrong move and I'll join Lily under psychiatric observation. My phone buzzes. Marcus, don't react. Everything's proceeding as planned. But the plan didn't account for Lily, for Victoria crossing this line. Ryan touches my arm. Sarah, please, just let us help. I jerk away, my voice rising deliberately. Help? Like you helped Eleanor? Victoria's mask slips for just a moment. Fear flickers behind her eyes. Security, Thomas calls right on cue. We need assistance here. As security approaches, I let them see exactly what Victoria wants them to see. An unstable woman having a breakdown. I struggle just enough to seem erratic but not dangerous. Take care of my sister, I tell Emily as they lead me away. Don't let them near her. Victoria watches from the doorway, victory written in every line of her perfect posture. She thinks she's won everything, the estate, the company, my freedom, my sister. She doesn't see Marcus in the parking lot, recording everything. Doesn't notice Emily slipping a nurse a thumb drive. Doesn't realize that sometimes, to win the game, you have to sacrifice your queen. In the security office, waiting for the psychiatric evaluation that Victoria undoubtedly arranged, I close my eyes and think of Eleanor, of Lily, of all the pieces Victoria moved so carefully into place. My phone buzzes one last time. Marcus. Files delivered. Tomorrow's board meeting will be interesting. I delete the message just as the doctor arrives, his clipboard already full of Victoria's carefully crafted concerns. Time to play my final role, the pawn who didn't realize she was about to become a queen. Tomorrow, Victoria Harper will learn that the game isn't over until the last piece falls, and I intend to make sure that piece is her. The Harper Industries boardroom buzzes with tension as Victoria takes her place at the head of the table. I watch through the security feed from Marcus's laptop, surrounded by federal agents in an unmarked van outside. The merger documentation is complete, Victoria announces to the board. With the Mitchell estate securing our position, the boardroom door swings open. Ryan walks in, followed by Emily and a stone-faced woman in a federal jacket. Actually, Mother, Ryan says, his voice steady, we should discuss the irregularities in the foundation's accounts first. Victoria's smile doesn't waver. This isn't the time. It's exactly the time. I step into the room, making Victoria freeze mid-sentence. Before we discuss my aunt's estate, let's talk about how she died. Security! Daniel starts to rise, but the federal agent raises her badge. Nobody leaves this room. Victoria's composure cracks for just a moment. Sarah, dear, shouldn't you be at the hospital? With my sister? The one you poisoned with the same medication cocktail that killed Eleanor? I slide a USB drive across the polished table. Everything's here. The offshore accounts, the falsified medical records, the pattern of mysterious deaths following Harper Foundation interventions. Lies, Victoria hisses, from an unstable woman. From your own records, Marcus steps in, carrying a familiar leather briefcase. The ones you kept in your private safe, the one I installed when I was CFO. Victoria's eyes dart between faces, calculating odds, searching for allies. She finds none. Ryan, she tries, surely you don't believe. I found Eleanor's original medical records, Ryan cuts her off. The ones before you had them altered. I'm done protecting this family's secrets. Victoria laughs, the sound brittle as breaking glass. Protected? You've never protected anything, Ryan. You're weak, just like your father. I built this empire while he played golf and you chased pretty girls. I made us untouchable. You made us monsters, Ryan says quietly. Victoria stands, suddenly radiating fury. Everything I did for this family, for our legacy. You think you can destroy that with some paperwork? I own this town. One phone call. To whom? I ask. Judge Harrison? He's being questioned about Eleanor's probate hearing. Thomas? He's already cutting a deal to save himself. Your pet doctors? They're running scared. You stupid girl. Victoria's smile turns vicious. You think this is justice? Revenge? You're just like the others. Weak, sentimental, easily broken. I'll destroy you, just like I destroyed them. And when I'm done, no one will even remember your name. That's where you're wrong. I pull out my phone, press play. Victoria's own voice fills the room, confessing to Eleanor's murder in the hospital corridor. I don't care if people remember my name. I care that they'll never forget yours. The boardroom erupts into chaos. Federal agents pour in. Daniel crumples in his chair. Board members scramble to distance themselves. But Victoria stands perfectly still, staring at me with something like recognition. Well played, she says softly. I almost wish you were really my daughter-in-law. We could have been magnificent together. I prefer magnificent on my own. As they lead Victoria away, Ryan touches my arm. Sarah, Don't. I step back. You chose your side too late. What happens now? I look around the boardroom at the empire Victoria built through blood and manipulation. Now, I'm going to do what librarians do best, preserve history, make sure no one forgets what happened here. Marcus appears at my shoulder. The federal investigation will take months. They'll want your testimony. They'll have it after I check on my sister. I turn to leave, but Victoria's voice stops me at the door. You think this is over? That you've won? She laughs, the sound echoing off marble walls. Oh, my dear, you have no idea what you've started. I meet her eyes one last time. No, Victoria. This isn't about winning, it's about justice. The difference is what you never understood. The federal agents lead her away, but her laughter follows me down the corridor. I don't look back. I've seen enough of Victoria Harper's face to last a lifetime. Besides, I have a sister to visit, a foundation to rebuild, and a story to tell. And this time, I'll make sure it has the right ending. The old library building still smells like books, even as workers strip away the Harper Foundation logos. Lily sits beside me on the front steps, her recovery visible in the return of color to her cheeks. What will you call it? She asks, watching the new sign being installed. The Eleanor Mitchell Memorial Library and Community Center. I hand her the dedication speech. Want to read it at the opening? She squeezes my hand instead of answering. We both know what it means, her voice getting stronger, her story becoming part of the narrative. Emily appears with coffee and newspaper clippings. Victoria Harper's conviction made headlines, but the smaller stories matter more. The returned properties, the overturned contracts, the lives slowly being rebuilt from the wreckage of Harper Industries. Marcus called, Emily says, settling beside us. He's testifying in another case. Apparently, Victoria's web stretched further than we thought. And Ryan? Cooperating with the investigation. He's selling everything, using the money to set up victim restitution funds. The morning sun catches the library's windows, and for a moment I see Eleanor's reflection instead of mine. What would she think of all this? Of justice served through careful manipulation and calculated revenge? A familiar car pulls up. Thomas, my ex-husband, looking smaller somehow without Victoria's influence propping him up. Sarah, he approaches cautiously. I heard about the opening. I wanted to... He trails off, noticing Lily's sharp gaze. I'm sorry for everything. I know. And I do know, finally. We were all pieces on Victoria's board, moved by her invisible hands. The difference was in how we chose to break free. He leaves a check, his contribution to the restitution fund, and drives away. One more thread in the tapestry of aftermath. Marcus arrives as the workers finish the sign. Quite a legacy you're building. Speaking of legacies, I turn to face him. When were you going to tell me about your daughter? He stiffens slightly. What about her? That Victoria didn't just destroy your career, that your daughter's mysterious illness cleared up as soon as you agreed to leave Harper Industries. His silence speaks volumes. You could have told me. We were fighting the same battle. No, he says quietly. You were fighting for justice. I was fighting for revenge. There's a difference. Is there? He gestures at the library, at the people gathering for the soft opening. Look what you built from the ashes. Me? I'm still burning. Before I can respond, a commotion erupts at the entrance. Daniel Harper stands there, aged decades in mere months, clutching an old book. It was Eleanor's, he says, holding it out like a peace offering. Victoria kept it as insurance. I thought you should have it. Inside, Eleanor's careful handwriting fills the margins with notes about the Harper family, observations, suspicions, plans never enacted. She saw it all coming, but ran out of time to stop it. Thank you, I say, but Daniel's already walking away, another ghost of the empire Victoria built, and I helped destroy. Lily reads over my shoulder. She was trying to protect you, wasn't she? Eleanor. She was trying to protect everyone. I close the book gently. Come on, let's go inside. The library fills with light and voices, children exploring the new reading nook, adults browsing job resources, life flowing back into spaces Victoria tried to control. But as I walk through my rebuilt world, Victoria's last words echo in my mind. You have no idea what you've started. Maybe she was right. Maybe this isn't an ending at all. Emily touches my arm. You okay? Just thinking about stories, I say, watching Lily help a young girl find the perfect book. How they never really end the way you expect. And how's this one ending? I look around at my transformed kingdom, built not from fear and manipulation like Victoria's, but from the ashes of what she destroyed. The power to help or harm, to rebuild or destroy, now rests in my hands. It's not, I realize. It's just changing chapters. The library hums with possibility, with futures being rewritten page by page. Victoria thought power meant controlling the story. I know better now. True power is giving others the chance to write their own,